All right. Happy Friday, everybody. This is the NFL GM's Power Rankings podcast post draft. This is the Minnesota Vikings. I know some of you have been expecting this since probably Monday, but as many of you know, I've been dealing with a sick kid for the better part of the week, but she is back at daycare, so I'm back with you guys. Anyways, we'll probably have a few people popping in and out over the coming hours that I go through the 32 teams here. But as mentioned, the focus of this podcast is to focus on the 32 teams and how they rank out, at least in my opinion, after the NFL, not the NFL, our rookie draft. A couple of notes before we get started. First off, this is completely based on my opinion. No statistical analysis really when I do it beyond what I think about players and how they scored last year and what I think about next year. If you're looking for statistical analysis, the Jets and I think half the Eagles write for DLF, so you've got some help there. Maybe others in the league who do as well. So better possibility for a statistical analysis of how these should rank out versus mine, or I'm sure there's probably some online tools. What I basically did is I went through each positional group and gave them a rating of 1 to 10. 1, dear God, this is terrible, aka my QB group, but we'll get to that in a second. Or 10, pretty much the best you could hope for. I was pretty sparing with my 10s. I think there's maybe only about 5 or 6 that I gave out, but those are truly elite position groups. Basically, I went through and calculated that in two ways. One, what's the raw score with all positions being equal? Obviously, that's not the same or not really accurate because you score more receivers than you do quarterbacks. Quarterback is more scarce than cornerback, things like that. But there's a raw score for how they get if you just add up their 1 to 10s on every position group, and then a weighting based off of, again, my opinion, the weights of basically 1 to 5. Again, a lot of this is based on scarcity and importance of the position, as I put it there. So, for example, corner's got a 1, quarterback's got a 5. I've also looked at potentially for a later cast or a later piece a stat-based weight, looking at some of the scores or otherwise, but didn't get to that this time around. Anyways, the way that I'm grouping these out before we jump into the actual ranks themselves are, first off, the group that's on the clock. These are the bottom of the barrel, the teams who will be in the conversation for the number 1 pick. Next, I have major decisions ahead. Next group down, so again, not that great, but definitely a tier better than the on the clock teams, but really have some major decisions around where they're going this year. Doesn't really look like they're going to be able to compete, but again, it doesn't necessarily mean they're out of a conversation to at least make a little bit of noise. Next, outside looking in, as mentioned, not the worst teams, but not quite in the playoff conversation. They don't quite have the dire situation that the major decisions ahead group does, but they're pretty much a year away before they're really in the conversation. Next up, middle class. This is where a pretty hefty chunk of the league fits. Really, like I said, it's don't be surprised if 1 or 2 of these teams sneak into the playoffs. Same time, don't be surprised if 1 or 2 of these teams pick in the top 10. But I felt like this is really that team that some call it purgatory, some call it middle class, that aren't quite playoff teams yet, although there will likely be a surprise or two, but they're not really bad enough to compete for one of those top picks. So that gets us through a good chunk of things. Then we get to the end of the hunt group. Really, these are the wild card or lower level division winner teams. They're probably not the ones who are going to go for the title, but definitely expect these names to be said a lot as we get towards the playoffs. And then last but not least, the title contenders, only a few of these teams, but these are the teams right now, again, before some of the injuries keep falling from OTAs and camps and otherwise, they really look like they're the top contenders for the title this year. But that being said, we'll jump right into the rankings. And, as a good podcast host, I try not to talk about my own team too much, but unfortunately that's where we have to start because the 32nd ranked team is the Minnesota Vikings. Now, again, this is probably expected by anyone who's been paying attention this offseason, as I've been systematically blowing up every position group. To give you an idea of how harsh I was on my team, my overall net score, again, 1 to 10 on every group: quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. I skipped the special teams, but defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, corner, safety. So total possible score of 90. I gave myself a 35. So I think many would say that's too high. Others will say that's about accurate. The point being, I don't have a quarterback. I don't have any running back to speak of, and I've got youth and things that need to develop at the other positions. So what I do have is draft picks. So I will be trying to play spoiler a couple of times in 2018, but really probably not going to be winning many games. So here's to not pulling the Browns and going 0-16, but never know what's going to happen. Next up, we have the 31st ranked team, and I don't think there's going to be many surprises on this one either. It's the Los Angeles, or soon-to-be Oakland Raiders. I'm sorry, soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders. Sorry, not Los Angeles. The Oakland, soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders. Too bad I can't edit anything, or else I'd take that out. But anyways, definitely another team that is a good bit away, I would say. Looking at that team, some of the best attributes of this team are they've added some good depth and some good rookies in this draft. And the defense really seems to be up and coming or have some established vets in there. Geno Atkins, Danielle Hunter, and Frank Clark, linebacking core, Levante David, Hicks, and the rookies that he picked up really seems to be on the rise, and also has about $40 million in cap space. So, again, this is where this team sits right now, but with trades, free agency, or otherwise, could see this team make some moves and jump a tier or two and leave me here in the on the clock tier by myself. But as it stands right now, with a maybe starting quarterback in for the Jets, a maybe starting running back for the Lions, and then a maybe starting receiver for the Jets. And I don't think he has a tight end right now. The offense is not going to put him anywhere close. So someone's got to be 31st. So Raiders, congratulations. You make up the other team in the on the clock. Again, you may jump a tier should Darnold need the full year to get up to speed in the Jets offense. But assuming the reports out of camp that he's been picking things up quickly are accurate, then you may be without a quarterback as well. But like I said, so two teams in the on the clock tier. Nothing too crazy, but probably not surprising for anybody. Before we get to the 30th team, I'm going to take a quick jump over to the league chat and see if anyone is planning to join this, or if I'm just going to be talking to myself for the foreseeable future. Yep, no one planning to join yet, so I will continue along. But I do see we've got two viewers, so hope you guys are enjoying. Next up, the 30th team, but again, in the major decisions ahead, speaking of Darnold, the 30th ranked team I have is the Washington Redskins. Ian's going to be none too pleased to hear that, but too bad. Traded up his first-round pick and some additional capital to get Sam Darnold. I know he was kicking himself afterwards because Allen did fall past his pick in the draft. I don't think it's the same quality of prospect, but if he was looking to add a rookie quarterback with a potential to start this year, then could have potentially saved him that first. But then when you look at the rest of his team, I would have probably held on to that first because he's got Darnold and Etlin as his quarterbacks. His running backs are the satellite guys behind established, not established, but rising starters in Gio and Breida. Receivers, Crabtree, Hearns, and Robbie Anderson. It's looking pretty good, especially with the word of Hearns getting some good looks in the Dallas camp. But then tight end, Leggett and Thomas, not really something to write home about. The good part of this team is the defense. With Snacks Harrison having the hell of a year he had last year, and all signs pointing to improved performance out of that team. DN Ingram is pretty fantastic and some pretty solid depth there, so in the best ball format should serve him quite well. Ogletree and Kirksey, I ended up knocking him a little bit because Ogletree did get traded to a new team, so thought is how are the Giants going to use him if he maintains the level of production he had or potentially bumps it with the new location, then this could easily be a much better position group than I have ranked. And then Kirksey I knocked as well because Michael Kendricks just signed with the Cleveland Browns. So there's a question about where is he going to fit in that scheme with Jamie Collins there, with Kirksey, and I'm blanking on the other gentleman who's in that linebacking core. But without a clear position role, the thought is that he's going to split time or take some time from Kirksey. So point is, may not have been as strong as it could have been, and then the secondary is good but not great. 14 million in cap space to improve as well. So look, if he's able to fall into a quarterback, running back, and tight end, then that's great. If not, then the Falcons got themselves a very nice piece and probably top 5 pick for next year. So again, I think a lot of the 30th and 31st teams are going to depend on where things go with the Jets quarterback situation, which is always a great thing to depend on if you're talking fantasy football. But right now, because of that uncertainty and the lack of pieces on offense, Ian's looking like a cellar dweller. Speaking of another team with a tough situation and a tough decision ahead of them, 28th ranked team is the 29th ranked team is the Cleveland Browns, aka Ham. So why are they the 29th ranked team? Really, it's the holdouts. We talked about this in previous podcasts, but with Alex Smith and Demario Davis on holdouts, both being very cheap but very productive players for Ham last year, he's in a very difficult situation because he's got about, let me scroll over here, about $11 million in cap space. But that really only gives him the flexibility to really get either Smith or Davis off of the holdout contract and be able to play next year. Right now, I've got him dinged as both being on holdout. Once that gets resolved, I'll probably adjust his ranking as much. But as of right now, he would not have a quarterback unless he gets Smith off holdout, so that dings him. His running back situation is great. He's got Melvin Gordon and then Naheem Hines and Jordan Wilkins, 2 rookies in the Colts situation. So if he can get himself some Marlon Mack, he's got that area locked up. Receiver, he's got Michael Thomas, which is great, but behind him isn't very promising. And then Seth DeValve at tight end. Again, it's with the weapons that were brought in, Landry, Gordon's back full time. Who knows what's going to be happening with Gordon? Point is, it doesn't look like there's going to be a lot of targets left over for DeValve. So I know he was sort of a sleeper in that Cleveland offense, but without an injury to Njoku or one of the other major receivers, it's going to be tough to see that really worth anything. The defensive side, it's not pretty either. Brown's looking solid at D tackle. Myles Garrett really started showing some flashes, as did Ogba, but that's probably the strongest position group he has at the end. Linebacker was hit hard with the Davis holdout and Shazier recovery. If Shazier would just retire, then he's probably got the cash he needs to take care of both Davis and Smith. But without that Shazier retirement, it's going to be tough to see him free that up. He's got Tony Jefferson at safety, and that's a really interesting piece, I think, with Matthew moving over to Houston. It's going to be a question of where does the points that Matthew racked up fall this year. I think Jefferson picks up a few. I think there's some other players there like Bethea or others who could see a little bit more time as well. But, you can see an uptick there. Corner isn't much to write home about. So reason they're 29 is really because of the holdouts. If he can find a way to fix that situation so that he's got a starting quarterback as well as a decent linebacking core, he probably jumps up to the next tier. But right now, he's sitting there at 29th. And then rounding out our bottom 5 is the Detroit Lions at 28th. So again, the Lions are one of those teams that's in a pretty difficult situation as well. So like I said, this is called decisions to make. Ian's decision to make is, what does he do with some of those pieces on defense like Harrison, Ogletree, and Ingram? If he's not going to get beat this year, is there a market for moving defensive players like that to either get his pick back or to pick up other draft capital? Or is he able to parlay, say, Darnold into something that could get him back on the map? The big decision for Ham is around Alex Smith and Demario Davis. What's he do with his holdouts? What's he do with Shazier? Because that's going to really impact where he falls next year for whether he's going for it or not. And then the Lions, look, we've all made this mistake when we come into a league. It's you're used to auctions in other auction environments where you see a $200 a $200 budget and $80 or $60 gets sent of it on the top player. So he went out and got Jameis Winston, Antonio Brown, some really good top end talents, but in the process has put himself in a situation where he doesn't have a ton of cap room to play with, about $6.5 million. But beyond Winston and Brown, his offense isn't that strong. You've got Carson and Rawls, and again, Carson's been picking up and showing well at the Seahawks camp. But when you bring in a first-round running back, usually that doesn't bode well for the incumbent at the position. So, running back's looking pretty scary for the Lions as a tight end. With Richard Rodgers is his only tight end of note. Jimmy Graham, of course, being signed there. So. Not sure how many targets can be left there for Rodgers. So on offense, besides Winston, Brown, and then he's also got Hardy and Smith, who could show some. He's got a good set of youth on defense, but the point is, he's not really going to be able to compete well this year until he can maybe through the draft add some pieces to that running game and tight end position. But again, he's got some players on defense as well who are. He's got some young guys, but he's also got a couple guys who are getting up there. So he's kind of in that in-between as well. So for now, we've got him at 28th. I think the decision he's got to make is what does he do with Antonio Brown? I know Brown's been on his trade block for some time. He's been trying to move him, but because of the contract, I think he's close to $30 million, if I remember correctly. Just not something he's been able to move at this point. So really it's going to come to a decision about whether he's willing to take a discount on moving Brown versus what he thinks he's worth, so he can start building this team back up. But it's nice that I'm finally joined here. We've got the Chargers on the line. Hey, how we doing?
Howdy. Very tired. How about you?
Very tired. It's I'm energized. I finally don't have a kid at home that I'm chasing around from dusk till dawn.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, no, I just popped in. I cut the end of your Lions. I actually didn't catch the first couple teams other than I think last one was Cleveland, right?
Yep. So, this is a perfect time. We've completed the first two of the tiers. So I'll recap. 32nd ranked team, Vikings. 31st, Raiders. 30th, Redskins. 29th, Browns. 28th, Lions.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely could see that. Yeah, I mean, just from what I heard about the Lions, you pretty much hit on everything. My only thing is Richard Rodgers is actually on the Eagles now. So he's like even in a worse spot because he's behind the rookie and Ertz. So he's not in good shape there.
Yeah, I would say not. But like I said, so tight end, that seems to be a theme at the tight end position. The teams that it's funny, the teams that aren't very good, and then the teams just shy of being at the top are very light at the tight end position. So it's really interesting to see kind of who's invested where and how it really has a very little correlation to how they fall out in my power rankings. But, that's why they're my rankings. Anyways, we're on to the next tier here. Next tier is one I've referred to as outside looking in, because they're not the worst teams in the league, but they're not quite the middle class. They've got some work to do before they're really going to be a threat at the playoffs. Some of them are on the right track. Some of them have some work to be done. Well, I'm sorry, all of them have some work to be done. But 27th, he's one of my favorite people, and I'm so happy to be able to talk about his team right now. It's the Baltimore Ravens, a.k.a. Faceless, in quite a few leagues with a lovely buddy. But he's kind of the inverse of what we've been talking about thus far. There have been a couple of teams in the bottom five who have had decent defenses, but just nothing to speak of on offense. When you look at the Ravens, he's got some okay pieces on offense, with that defense needs some help. Just a quick run through his quarterback situation is Luck Brissett. So he's got the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts on lock. 2 starters on at running back in Freeman and Collins, Keelan Cole and Tyrell Williams at receiver. A potential starting tight end. It's not quite sure who the starting tight end is going to be for Denver right now, but Jake Butt at tight end. But then when we get over to the defensive side, he's got Darius, who was traded over to the Jaguars last year. But the question is going to be the long-term location of Darius, because they did just draft a D-end in the first round. So that may be an indication that they're not planning to commit to Darius long-term. Not quite sure. Moving over to the end, Griffin as his primary piece there. Some stuff behind it, but nothing really to speak of. Williams and Lee at linebacker. He basically went hog wild on the Green Bay rookies at corner this year, and then in the first round invested in Derwin James. So I've been trying to be on the more pessimistic side of the rookies because they are rookies and we haven't really seen anything from them yet. So with his secondary basically made up of that, he's just basically above average. So he's got an average to above average defense and a good quarterback and running back situation, but receiver and tight end hurts him. So until he gets some pass catchers and a front four to really step up for him, I don't see him really being anywhere above third in the North.
Yeah, pretty much like his wide receivers are – his team just doesn't have any depth. Like, he's got 2 starting running backs, like you said. He's got some love at wide receiver. Got possible points coming out of tight end, but like he's got one guy he can depend on for points at least in every defensive category. 2 in linebackers, I guess you could say. If you just assume those 3 other guys besides Vince Williams all score over 100 points, you're gonna get 1 starter out of those 3 every week.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it's just like he doesn't have any dependable depth. And he's not deep enough without those rookies to really like know he's going to be getting points every week at every position.
Yeah, exactly. If James steps in and is phenomenal in year 1, Keanu O'Neal and who knows, those rookies do get targeted a lot, so maybe you get some points there that the back 4 can make up for the front 4. Maybe he gets a little bit higher into the wild card conversation, but again, without probably another pass catcher or a more reliable tight end, I don't really see the team doing much this year.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was 27. You're really going to like who I have 26th.
Is it going to be Broncos or is it going to be Chiefs? Man, we've got Broncos in one of that team chats, and we've been talking about it. And I don't know, I honestly don't know where to put his team right now, whether it's borderline, if he gets a few guys on waiver wire is going to be good, or if it's just this is going to be a bad team this year. But I'm curious to see how you have it ranked and whatnot, and what your reasoning is behind it.
Yeah, the way I'm looking at it is the offense is going to have to carry the defense, but again, things are starting to break in his favor a little bit. And let me talk a little bit more about that. Bortles is showing from a fantasy perspective, he's a capable player. Now, I'm not going to put him up there with some of the elite ranked quarterbacks. So I gave Bortles a 6 out of 10. So just a little bit more since you weren't on when I opened things up. Every position group's got a 1 to 10 ranking. 1 being god awful, aka my quarterbacks. 10 being elite, aka Broncos running backs. So Bortles gets a 6 out of that. For comparison's sake, Luck Brissett gets a 7. So I'm saying that he's going to put up fantasy points, maybe not the same long-term security other players have, or same ceiling other players have, or even floor other players have, but above average. Running backs, like I said, Zeke, Shady, and the players he's got for depth, I think his offensive flex is going to be a running back week in, week out. Receiver is going to be interesting for me because he's got Mike Wallace, who is now in, I think, the right situation in Philadelphia. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a good spot for him as the deep threat there. And then Mike Williams with Hunter Henry going out. Everyone's looking at, okay, is it going to be who gets the targets? And look, I'm not sure if it's going to. I don't know what the answer is yet, but the answer could be Mike Williams because he is the high draft capital, and he is, I believe, the most physically imposing of those receivers. So if there was someone who's going to step up as a red zone threat, very easily could be Williams. And then from a tight end perspective, he's above average. He's got Clay, and then who knows what Goddard's role is going to be, but he's got him. So offense, I got to put him above average, and then elite at running back, and then defense, he's got Luggett and Logan, which is great at D tackle, but again, outside of Crawford, not much to speak of in the rest of the front four. And then it's just kind of depth. Depth. No one really stands out at linebacker. Poole is the best corner, but again, that's slightly above average. And then he's got Heath, and then I traded him Malik Hooker. So point is, he's got an average defense, I'd say. Outside of the running backs, he's got an average offense. If things break his way, I can see I can see him getting 8-8. But I can't see him doing much better than that.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's the view I had on it, is that he's going to have to – there's going to be so many ways that this season is going to have to play out well for him, including the actual NFL season and how he does waivers and additions there to buff up his team throughout the season. But there's just so many things that are going to have to go right for his team for it to be above average, basically. And obviously he doesn't have his first round pick this year, so he's kind of playing with house money, but at the same time, in a league like this, you almost get more value by selling McCoy for a second or a third if you can get it, and then just pawning off some of those older players or players that throughout the season, outside of Mike Williams and Zeke, outside of those players, you try and sell them off and get picks back for them, I guess, so you can build up your team over time. And then through free agency in a year or two when we get this first real big free agency class. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I'm kind of more resigned with the idea that my pick from him is going to be around 10 and less around top 5 now. Just with some of the changes he's made and the stance he's taken on that team and group chats that we have, which I don't really have an issue with it. I know what I need to target with that pick anyways, and I should be able to get what I need at that pick. And if not, I can move something to try and get some more draft capital back. But it'll be interesting to see how exactly Lady Luck treats him this year on that front, because he's got his teams on defense has okay depth, but like you were saying, there's nobody on that defense I can look at and be like, that guy's going to be scoring in the lineup every week. It's outside of his 2 defensive tackles. And Lou gets suspended for 4 games at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So that's not going to help his case.
So either way, that's why he's in this probably a top 10 pick. I think we both agree on that at this point. But again, with a guy like Wallace and a guy like Williams, you could see, again, I'm not absurdly high on either, but it wouldn't shock me to have Wallace put up 4 wide receiver 2 weeks and maybe wide receiver 1 week, or for Williams to put up a wide receiver 1 week out of nowhere where he picks up 2 touchdown passes and 50 yards or something. So I could see him stealing a few, but I can't see him getting above 8-8.
Seems reasonable.
All right. Well, we're moving along here. The 25th ranked team I have, another newcomer to the league, rest in peace, Kim, are the New Orleans Saints. Again, another team that's interesting in the way that things are balanced. Definitely on the younger side in quite a few positions, but could have some things break right for him if he gets a little bit of luck. Having Carr on such an expensive contract is tough, but Carr is a dependable quarterback, so he gets above average marks for that. He's got Freeman and some depth at running back. A bunch of upside guys at receiver, but no one really stands out as, yep, I feel good about this. Three potential starters. Well, two potential starters right now. We'll see how the real life Chargers deal with their tight end situation, and a high potential guy at in the future for Jonnu. So I really like that tight end depth chart for him. D tackle of Hurst, which you got from me, but not much behind that. No one really of note at the end. McKinney and Smith at the linebacker position, but again, nothing really far behind that. Put him as average at corner. Two decent corners, but again, nothing really to write home with. But then the rising All-Pro and Biard at safety helps out the back end, and does still have about $18.5 million in cap space. So has the space to add to his team if he needs to, especially if he can move Carr for something. But that being said, I think he's another team who's realized he's got some building to do and isn't necessarily looking at this year. I think based off his trade bait, he's looking to move guys like Carr or Ertz or McKinney, guys who could help others win now so he can win later, and he can free up some of that cap space. But that being said, he's probably at that back end of the top 10. So I think based off of this year, he should still be able to get a contender, a useful piece, maybe not a blue chipper, but a good piece if he's picking around 8 or 9, which I think is what we have projected here.
Sounds about right. He definitely needs some help on the defensive end side of things. It is a he again, right?
I think it's a he, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like their team has potential, but it's just very young, and there's a lot of question marks with like how old is Royce Freeman actually do in Denver? Does Booker eat up a bunch of those carries, and you've spent a top however many pick on a running back by committee guy that isn't blue chip player in college like Geis or Chubb, and then you've just got so much money tied up in Josh Doxson and Devontae Parker and Zay Jones, who are three guys that are they worth that much money? So
he had Kelsey. So again, the tight end collective there was even stronger at one point because he had Ertz and Kelsey. I think this is one of the teams that I don't think it was Kim initially. I think the initial owner really doubled down with that tight end position, thinking it's going to be a position of scarcity, and they'd be able to flip Ertz and Kelsey for not quite quarterback level premium, but definitely a premium. But basically, he ended up shooting me an offer basically of Kelsey for Doxson, Jonnu, and then like a second in Hurst or something. And it was just kind of like, consolidating some guys to a premium piece made a little bit of sense for me. So I gave him that. So he's moving that direction. Just like I said, I think a decision of, like you said, are those receivers worth those contracts? Probably not, but we'll see. And I think next year, especially for Doxson, he can renegotiate that. But again, it would make his contract longer. The other piece is, can he break up his Carr and Ertz shares to something that turns into either good draft capital or makes more sense for the long-term vision of his team?
Yeah, I'm not sure Carr is going anywhere on that team with that salary, with 4 years remaining. Like, he's young, and he's probably in Oakland for those 4 years, or Vegas in a year, or whatever it is. But that's just way too much money for Derek Carr. Like, your team would be better off just hard tanking for a top pick and grabbing a rookie quarterback and paying him less than $6 million than to pay Carr $30 million for the guaranteed aspect that he's at least a starter, I guess.
No, it's true. And again, I think everyone went a little bit haywire with Carr last year when he got the big extension. So not surprising, but at the same time, he may not be the quarterback everyone thinks. Or who knows, with Jordy and Cooper and Martavis and, Lottie everybody coming in to play football in Oakland at this point, maybe Carr goes past happy and goes for 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to happen, though.
I doubt it.
All right, rounding out this tier. The tier's getting a little longer, I promise, but this 4-team tier of outside looking in, the 24th ranked team I have, because it would just be impolite to not have him with his brother, is the Rams. Again, doing a quick run through of this team. Offense is looking pretty good. Defense, the front seven is solid. The back seven, not so much. I'm sorry, the front four is solid. Back seven, not so much. But it's just bad enough, I think, on defense that this team's not really going to be in a conversation outside of the top 10 this year, despite being in the West, which was, I think, about average last year. Quick highlight, quarterback is Cam. He's got pass-catching running backs, Duke and Dixon. Receivers look pretty good, though. Diggs, Crowder, and Kurtz. Kurtz having some upside. Crowder being a bit of a disappointment last year, but I think people are expecting a resurgence with Smith in town. Jimmy G at tight end, so potential having him linked up with Rodgers could be pretty exciting. D tackle Malik and Linval is deadly in a real. I definitely would want to play against this team in real life. That would just be cool. He's got Cam and some depth at the end, but then once you get past the front four, it doesn't get much better. Perfect, who again, who knows how many games he'll play between injury or suspension this year, and some depth. Decent corners, four of them. That again, he'll get a decent week at corner He'll get a decent corner game each week, I think, with what he's got, but nothing insane. And his safety is average, just kind of depth players there. And then about $12 million in space. So, again, like I said, this team looks like it could make a jump. It would need to find that running back. I think beyond Duke and Dixon, probably would need a running back one to really make that. So maybe this is one of those teams, like you had said earlier, that Shady could go to and for like that second and third and help them make the leap. But again, based off of the level of talent in the back seven on defense, I don't think that's the answer. I think it's probably a team that needs to see another year or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think Rams would be wise to make a splash move like that. I think they'd probably want to target somebody like Hyde, maybe. Hope he gets picked up somewhere because he's on a short enough contract. And he'd probably be cheaper to grab from Jeremy if Chubb really does come out and steal all those carries that Hyde was predicted to have in Cleveland. He might be a better fit. But basically, anybody but LaShawn McCoy, given how old LaShawn McCoy is.
Yep.
Because you don't know how many years he has left. So that's my biggest issue. Because he could still be running for 3 years from now. But it's just a matter of, like, when do the wheels fall off? And he's at that wrong side of 30. So
no, and
it'll
that's
be interesting.
I think it was the Packers traded up to get Chubb to protect his Hyde investment, but I think Hyde's free agent after this year.
I think, let me check. I've got it.
And not in real life, but in our league.
Well, he'll probably get cut. Hyde has 1 year left on his contract in this league, and I'm pretty sure he can be cut with like minimal money for the Browns, if I remember correctly.
Makes sense. So yeah, they're running back and a back seven defense away, really. But again, with a guy like Jimmy G at tight end, how long before you need to start replacing that? So he's in that kind of weird spot of, it'd be nice to compete this year, but if you're not going to, then maybe Graham needs to get moved, and then a couple of other pieces so you can really make sure you hit your window of next year and the year after as hard as you can.
Yeah, the NFC West is going to be interesting just with how some of those teams are stacked up.
Well, this next year has two other NFC West teams in it. This is it's much larger tier than my last couple. I didn't get lazy. It was just a matter of when I did my ratings on this, I was by far and away the worst team. But then, again, that's kind of on purpose. The middle really did stick together pretty well here. So this is a 9-team tier, and I'm calling it the middle class. Because, again, I wouldn't be shocked if one or two of these teams ended up in the playoffs or in the top 10 of the draft. So they're not statistically there right now, except for maybe one of them. But point being, these teams have a wide range of outcomes, including the 22nd team, which, based off of my different methodologies, was anywhere from in the playoffs to the 11th overall pick. So, again, a bit of a range there. I think Eric's going to like that particular piece of knowledge because of the way I had to rank his team the first time we did kind of the post-draft review. But without further ado, 23rd ranked team I have are the Carolina Panthers. Again, I think a team that recognizes their building and is reflecting it in the way that the team is set up. They've got their quarterback, hopefully of the future, in Dak, Tevin Coleman, and James White at running back. Two younger guys who should have a couple more years in the league, and Coleman still pre-second contract. I think everyone who's a Coleman owner in any dynasty league hopes that he finds a better location for that second place. Receiver moved up to make sure he got Cortland Sutton this year, and then some stuff behind them, but again, nothing to write home about. Not really a great situation at tight end. Jesse James there at tight end. It's a real big question in terms of who's going to be playing tight end for Pittsburgh. Is it Vance McDonald, who's owed a lot of money, and they traded some draft capital to San Francisco for, and had a great game in last year's playoffs, or Jesse James, who's kind of always been that backup to Ladarius Green when he was supposed to be there and then fell through, and now Vance McDonald when he's there. So seems kind of blocked with James. Defense, A'Shawn Robinson had a good rookie year, but again, not as elite as some other positions. Flowers at the end, Quan Alexander and Kendricks at linebacker. Kendricks, of course, I think got cut and now signed with Cleveland, so it'll be interesting to see what position he plays. But again, I've already kind of reviewed that when I was talking about Kirksey earlier. Again, same situation as the Rams, 4 decent corners. So should get a decent corner week every week, but nothing insane. But then with Carl Joseph and Harrison Smith, that's a pretty disgusting safety duo. Probably the biggest challenge of this team and why they're going to be stuck in sort of purgatory this year, they have no cap space. So, again, it's got too many strong pieces to blow it up, especially, on defense with Quan, with Smith, with Joseph. But again, he's got to find a way to free up some cash, or else he's going to be stuck in that 6-10 to 9-7 range, kind of hoping to limp into the playoffs.
Yeah, he's got to find a way to get Bowman off of his books, unless he's really convinced that Bowman's going to outperform how he performed last year and get signed somewhere, which he hasn't yet. I don't think it's for a lack of trying on his part. And the Kendricks bit, that's Michael Kendricks from the Eagles. Yeah, I mean, I legitimately had the same thought. I was like, wait, isn't he the guy that's on the Browns now? And he actually didn't sign with the Browns, supposedly. Like, he got really mad on Twitter about it. Yeah, so Eric Kendricks is still in Minnesota, which I think is going to be good for him. But, like, he just has so much money tied up in so few linebackers. And then another $27+ million contract for a QB in Dak, who that's another contract, which it's fortunate that it's only got 2 years on it, in my opinion, because I just don't think Dak is gonna have that long-term value. And I think this guy has to hope that Coleman goes somewhere really good next year, and leaves Atlanta. But I don't think that's gonna happen based solely off of like how running backs have played out in the draft so far this past year. Maybe he gets lucky and Jerick McKinnon sucks for the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan goes full man crush and signs Coleman and cuts McKinnon, but I doubt it. I think that's honestly best case scenario for Coleman, just because he'd be in a system that he knows, and Shanahan's proven that he knows the best way to use him. But it's a good team on paper, rebuild wise, in my opinion, but just some of the contract numbers really take this team behind the Woodhouse on it.
Yeah, like you said, I think, and I was offering for Bowman, shockingly, during the draft and couldn't get a deal done. But yeah, I think that's going to be a key towards the rebuild, as well as breaking up some of those pieces. Again, I think next year is going to be a little bit more optimistic because, like you said, based off the draft, I think McKinnon's the only back who was a veteran that found a new starting role somewhere else. But as long as I think isn't it still Sarkisian who's the offensive coordinator in Atlanta?
Yes, it's still
Uh,
Steve Sarkisian.
I mean, when he was at Alabama, he loved a multiple backfield. I can't see him doing something else. I think Coleman's going to get extended there because honestly, I don't think the GM really knows what he's doing there either. But that being said, you know, this is a team that's projected for the 10th overall pick next year based off these rankings, so wouldn't be the worst thing. I think the only thing you can really hope for is that a complete lack of weapons around Dak gives him a down year and he's able to renegotiate that contract to something a little bit more palatable. And between that and freeing up some Bowman money, that he can address some of these other positions of need. But otherwise, I think the only way he does this is with moving a guy like probably not Quan. I think his linebacking core needs him, but maybe a Smith or a Joseph to another team who could use him.
He'll also free up just a little over $3.5 million, I think, from next year from his 2 drops he made of Sharp at $5.33 million and Sherman at $5.25 million. So he'll get some more money next season, but not a whole lot.
That's true. All right, moving along. Next team we've got up here is, like I said, one of the teams that, based off of my weights, ends up as 22nd in my power rankings. But if I go to what the rank was, if I just did the straight sum up the net score of every position, they come in as a top 10 team. So, again, interesting to see whether my weights mean anything, and this could be a surprise team with those that way. And it's going to be a team I think it's going to surprise you a lot. So, hold on to your seat. The 21st ranked team I have here are the 22nd ranked team here are the New England Patriots.
Ooh. I was waiting to see when they dropped.
Well, again, that's the thing here. Like with the weightings, I'll just do a quick overview here. Tyrod's the quarterback, McCaffrey at running back, J-Matt and Godwin at receiver, a strong tight end duo in Kelsey and Njoku, Jernigan and Payne at deep tackle, Dunlap and Leo at D end, Blake and Ryan. Basically, I think that's the 2 linebackers out of Green Bay. It's a pretty solid duo there. Butler and Hinton, again, very strong corner tandem, and then Williams plus at safety. So if you took basically the defense outside of safety and then the tight end, like he's got some above average to, I won't call it elite, but very good pieces there. The question is going to be how long, if at all, does Tyrod hold off Mayfield? I think that's also a question you're very curious about. McCaffrey, what does C.J. Anderson do to his role, and what's his next step forward in his development? Is he a running back 1, or is he still in that running back 2 conversation? With the Edelman suspension, does J-Matt have a chance to take that slot role, and plus Godwin, you do that, and you could have an average to above average receiving core. So the point being, I could see this team easily hitting 8-8, and then if Tyrod hangs on to that job, the way that it had broken out when I had done the net, would have been the Patriots winning the AFC East. So again, if you look hard at the AFC East, it's not as ironclad as it was last year. I think I have all 4 teams within a 10-spot range in the rankings. But that said, 11-spot range. Sorry. The Patriots is either going to, or again, this is another one of those Eric comments he's going to love. Patriots are either going to suck or be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. If things break right for them, they've got a good team, but there's just so many things that have to break right for them. Like Tyrod's going to keep his job. Jordan Matthews has to be good. Simi Cobbs and Noah Brown have to produce something. Kelsey and Njoku will be fine. He's got to get more out of Daron Payne than I bet he kind of expected coming into this. He needs another one of those defensive ends to step up. Maybe Leonard Williams finally puts it together. It's $6 million. There's just so many spots where like he needs the right things to happen for that team to be successful this year. And I know I talked to him, or he reached out to me about Baker at one point. So I know it's on his mind that he is going to have issues at quarterback. So maybe if he sees that his team isn't producing towards the beginning of the season, maybe he tries to trade Tyrod to a team and get a first-round pick or two to try and prepare himself to getting a new QB. So we'll see how he does that.
Yeah, again, that was a surprise to me, to be honest. Of the ratings when I did them, that I was expecting the Patriots to be about here when I went through everything, but then when I summed it up the first time, to see them as a top 10 team, I think even he would be surprised to hear himself in the top 10 conversation. I think he's working that direction, but then also looking at some of the contracts that he has. McCaffrey's contract's not a fun one. Tyrod's is going to be tough to move if he needs to. So, and then Jordan Matthews, I think, is also he really needs him to step up this year, or else that contract is going to become very difficult to have on his team. But again, surprised that I figured, and as we saw, you were a little bit surprised by. But wide range of outcomes again. That's why they're in this section here of the middle class that could be drafting top 10, could be a division winner as I projected here. So completely possible. Again, to clarify, my power ranking projections are different than the net projections. So I haven't projected the Patriots into the playoffs at this point. They're just, again, like I said, the other methodology that I had used before settling on this one. Anyways, 21st ranked team, the Tennessee Titans. Again, so another one of these teams that very strong on offense, not so much on defense, still some work to do, but the pieces that he has in place on offense should be there for a couple of years. Cousins at quarterback, Dalvin Cook, and I think I traded him Murray as well, so I think he's got the handcuffs there, as well as Jay Will. So should be just fine at running back. Reek and Corey Coleman at receiver. Big question mark around Jordan Reed at tight end. Not sure whether he's going to be a week-to-week play or not, or where he really falls down in things. But if he can give anything compared to his past production, he's got a pretty top-notch offense. Otherwise, this could end up being a big hole for him here at tight end. Defense, again, not a whole lot of good things to talk about. D-tackle, he's got Nkandiche, who I was a big fan of coming out of school, who's let me down in the leagues I have him in. Mike Daniels at the end. Burgess in depth at linebacker, so not a lot. Buster Screen and Trufant. So again, above average just because Screen gets targeted so much. But again, nothing wildly great. And then Thomas and Jones at safety. Does have $16 million in cap space to continue building out the below average areas he has right now. Really that front four, actually call it front seven, and maybe a little bit of tight end or receiver depth. But again, I think this is one of those teams that is probably pretty well pegged in this area rather than the wide range of outcomes we have for some of the others. What do you think?
Talking about the Titans, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think this is one of those teams where, unlike a few that you've mentioned, where it's like everything has to break right for them to be great, I think this team has a much smaller window where it has to have things go really right for it to be great. Like I really like the running backs there. I think they've got a good combo between Dalvin and Sonny. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is good, and one of the few QBs that's making that much money that's actually worth that much money. It's just wide receiver. He's going to have somebody step up with Tyreek Hill. Maybe he gets best ball production out of Kiki and Corey, and they end up being able to produce a dependable wide receiver 2 for him. He just really has to hope that Jordan Reed stays healthy for a full season, which I don't know is actually physically possible for him. that kicking teams don't matter. Nimdici or Kimdici or whatever his name. Nah, he did play a full season last season, so that's not even like he's underproducing. He just played poorly. So he's really like he's another guy that has a few guys that are going to be slightly dependable on the defensive side of things, but he's lacking dependable depth, which I think is a fairly common issue among these teams in this ranking area, I guess. But he's got plenty of money to play with, so maybe he tries to move something to bring a dependable tight end in or another wide receiver or something. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there.
Well, I mean, you hit on a very important piece there. Is if he tries to do it via trade, you got to give something to get something. So again, wild concept. But without the depth that some of the better teams have, or that some of the teams that are lower on the rankings are willing to give up, I don't see how he's going to rebuild this. Like, I could see him bringing in, a couple pieces for, say, Dalvin Cook or Kirk Cousins. But then what does that do to those positions? He's going to have to do it in such a way that the few elite pieces he has get broken up. Again, I don't see the depth to be able to say, okay, I can keep my starters and make my team better. I think this is one of those where I've got to break my great starter, say Cousins, into a good quarterback and a good tight end. And I need to break my great running back into a okay running back and some defensive pieces.
Mm-hmm. I think he might be able to do it without doing that, just because he's got the cap space to play with. He needed to be way more active on the initial waiver wire, and he needs to really pound that shit once the real season starts and once we get an injury or two on the defensive side. And now you're looking at the third linebacker in a rotation getting snaps, and that wasn't happening before, so he wasn't rostered. So he needs to go out and get guys like that, which I don't think a lot of people think about. And I honestly didn't think about it last season, but I was in tank mode, so I have my excuse. But I think a lot of people miss out on players that are available on the wire and through the free agency aspect of this, just because they assume, okay, each team's got up to 40 players, there's 32 teams, all the good players are going to be gone. They're all going to be gone. But in reality, I'm sure there's going to be, I know Chicago grabbed some dude off the waiver wire past the halfway point of the season, and he helped win games in the playoffs on the defensive side of things. So it'll be interesting to see if Titans can really go for that, or if they're going to have to do something where they break up one of their running backs or maybe Hill and try and get a different wide receiver. But it's definitely going to be a situation where that dude's got to find tight end help, which is going to be rough for him, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I hope Jordan Reed the best, but I don't see him ever returning to the level he was in the professional game. But hey, we're to our top 20. And, regular podcast guest / host / whatever we call those who participate relatively often here, especially during the draft, the Dallas Cowboys are the 20th ranked team. Again, gets a bump for the fact that he's got technically two starting quarterbacks right now in Rivers and McCarron. Good depth from a best ball perspective at the running back position between Drake, Ajayi, and Blount. Again, very good looking receiving core in Thielen, Benjamin, and Miller from best ball perspective. Good stability in Rudolph. It's the defense, especially the front four, that start giving this team trouble. I'd say front four and back four, actually. Vea was more of a need pick than a talent pick, I feel like, for him, because he doesn't have much else out to D-tackle. Hicks is his only reliable at the end. One moment. Be right back.
This team's an interesting one for sure. He's definitely, I think he's got to, if he wants to take advantage of Rivers, he really needs to move on that now, just because I don't think Rivers has much for this NFL world left. I like his running backs a lot outside of Ajayi being 19 million for 3 years. I think that ends up biting him in the ass. But that was probably done as like, hey, I'm going to grab Ajayi and Drake, both the Miami running backs, and I'll be solid. Yeah, it's 20 million a year, but he'll be good. But it's just another one of those teams. And I mean, I like the idea behind a lot of it. I think he's got a lot of good talent in place, but it's got that Best By date stamped right on the side with Philip Rivers' name on it. So
Yeah, I agree with Rivers. I'm even one of those with Ajayi. I don't think he's long for this league. Same with Blount.
Ajayi's gonna get cut by the Cowboys at some point, just because he's not gonna be able to eat 19 million a year at running back over the next 3 years for a guy that's stuck in a middling running back by committee. Unless Ajayi really takes over the bulk of those carries in Philly, I don't see him sticking around very long.
Yeah, and with $3 million in cap space, I think this is probably of this middle class group one that's likely to fall into that top 10 range. Not because of performance, but rather recognizing that he's not a contender unless things break wildly his direction, and saying, okay, what can I get for Rivers? Will anyone give me anything for Ajayi to get this contract off my books? And he's got enough other strong producers in his receiving core at Rudolph, and then his linebacking core to be able to begin the rebuild. I'd be shocked to see if he hasn't made an offer for, I think it's the Seahawks, since he's got Allen or otherwise, to bring him in. But again, I think that owner also has Mariota, so not exactly the easiest trading spot there. But I would not be shocked to see the Cowboys starting to blow things up at the end of this year. But the window is this year, but really needs his rookies on defense to step up and figure out what the heck he's going to do in his secondary, because he's got two decent corners that should give him, moderate production. But then he's got Cam Chancellor and Hal at safety, who is above average at this point. So, look, I like the offense. I'm not as big of a fan of the defense, and I think I agree with you here that it's best if won by of 2018. Otherwise, it's time to sell.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he does, because it's not like he's got a whole lot of pieces. Like, he's got pieces that he can stick with. Like, I don't see a reason for him to trade Thielen or whatever, however it's pronounced. But, like, wouldn't be surprised if all of Philip Rivers is gone. Wouldn't be surprised if Ajayi's cut. Blount and Drake will stay because they're good enough. Benjamin could be a guy he trades mid-season if he starts producing well for Buffalo and he decides, you know what, I'm not in it this year. I'm not going to be in the money. I may as well try and get as much capital as I can to try and make my team better in the future. But it's going to be interesting to see how he navigates Philip Rivers in the future, or that quarterback situation in general, because it is not easy to get a quarterback in this league. Not easy at all. So you're either getting one you're trading for one, and he's going to be probably overpaid and underperforming, or they're just going to be bad and probably likely to be usurped by a rookie, or you're having to get a top 5 or 6 pick to get a quarterback that's actually going to be really good. Because I think all the quarterbacks that were worth anything in this year's draft went in the first round, and then Kyle or whatever Luetta went to. So it's not easy at all to get a quarterback in this league. But maybe that changes in 1 or 2 years when all the main contracts we signed at the beginning start to fall off.
Yeah. So again, I think, and again, I think a lot of people have Rivers as their target in like NFL 10s, for example, as that late round quarterback who, based off of the weapons there, could approach 35 touchdowns and 5,000 yards, which again would be pretty sexy. So if that happens, there's going to be a contender who comes sniffing for it. So, and again, it could be the Cowboys still. Just a matter of how things break. Anyways, that's the 20th ranked team. 19th, we have the team that had drafted first overall this year, the Philadelphia Eagles. Just kind of going through them real quick. One of the few teams with two starters on Eli and Tannehill. Very strong running back core with Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. Receiving core is building. They have Fuller, who's a great best ball asset, but not a ton behind him yet. They've got the Cincy tight end pretty well locked down between Eifert and Croft. Moving over to the defense, Fletcher Cox is a very nice piece to have at D-tackle. Quinn and Rivers should give a good number of good weeks for D-end for them, especially since we start two. Davis, Ragland, and the rookies that they picked up this year are looking good. Still on the average side, but with some upside. Definitely have punted corner thus far, so this is kind of a TBD there, since I think the only one they have is Quincy Wilson. And then from a safety perspective, three not strong safeties in the position, but three good safeties there. But again, I see this as a team that's definitely a riser, and of the teams in this middle class, one that's likely to be stomping after that wild card position, especially once they add a couple of corners and maybe another receiving piece. The problem is they have about $4 million in cap space, so it's going to be a challenge to see how they do that without necessarily cannibalizing someplace else.
Well, the bigger issue there is they've already got 40 total players, so they have to cut people. Because do taxi squads still apply to total players? No, correct?
No, it's 40 on the main roster and then 3 on the taxi, and then I think unlimited IR.
So you're either putting guys on taxi, like some of the rookie linebackers, and risking those dudes. Like you risk losing them like you lost John Ross. Or you start cutting guys that you don't believe are going to be impactful. Like maybe you cut Peterson. He's $4 million. He's on a 1-year deal. Short-term pain, but long-term, you're probably better off for it. Probably cut Lance Dunbar, I think, just because they already have Barkley and Henry there, so they don't have to worry about like, hey, where is this random free agent running back going to land? Are they going to give me points? Because they still need cornerback. They still need pieces that, like, they still need a punter. They don't have a punter yet, so that's 2 roster spots at least that they need to open up. So do they risk those rookies they have, or do they start cutting old dudes? I think it's going to be interesting because they're very much in on we're competing this year, which strikes me as odd given how they let John Ross go, and they haven't really done much to try and like their wide receiver core is awful. Like that is Will Fuller's great if you're having a full best ball lineup of wide receiver. But when Will Fuller is your de facto best wide receiver, you're gonna be in for a bad time.
No, exactly. So it's a question of, they do have 2 win now quarterbacks, I'd say, in Eli and Tannehill. Are they able to say put some pieces together to add a piece to the receiving core without giving up too much? And again, like you said, I think there's some ways to add some cap, especially say around Peterson, around Dunbar, and others. But again, this is not a team that can really afford to risk losing the youth that they basically finished last year to acquire. So, but one that has traded well and hasn't probably put themselves in the hunt.
Yeah, they'll be an interesting team to watch. I'm pretty sure I've said that about most of the teams so far, but it's just like with 32 different owners, there's going to be 32 different play styles. And with each team being like, there's no real teams that are just straight stacked. Like, oh, this dude just signs in at the very beginning of the season and then signs back in at the end and collects their money. Like, there's no teams like that, even though it's best ball.
Yeah.
So it's just, this is my first major like production style league where it's got the salary cap, it's got the contracts, it's got the big NFL theme. There's 32 teams. And so, like, to me, this is all just like blows my mind sometimes seeing how people play the game and how it's different between each person. So
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Again, I'm actually going to start up very similar to this right now, and it's similar to. It's very interesting to see teams learning that lesson right now. For example, it's a team who has a $31 million bid on Todd Gurley and a $30 million bid on Ezekiel Elliott. Same team.
So it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers,
basically. And then you've got another team who's got $50 million tied up at quarterback. Odell Beckham went for $33 million in here, so it's funny in every league because, like I said, it's the reaction to anyone who's been in an auction league is I'm expecting to spend 40% of my budget on a stud if I want one in this league. So what do I need to do? I need to go do that. So if I get that stud for 20% of my budget in this league, I'm playing with a bunch of newbies. This is great. But then you get to a point saying, oh, shit, now I have to spend, min salary on 5 starters because I blew all of my wad on Odell Beckham. So it's always not a fun lesson to learn, but one that is being learned, again, in that startup as well. So anyways, back to our league. 18th team. A team that, again, I think is a good chance to be a riser here, especially how the draft fell to him and how he was able to play it. The Seattle Seahawks. One that the eventual owner of Josh Allen, even though he had Marcus Mariota before, really just kind of let value come to him. Yep. So quick overview of the key players here. Mariota and Josh Allen at quarterback. Kamara, Chase Edmonds, and Mark Walton at running back, Funchess and Lockett at receiver, Hooper at tight end. Again, committee of depth at D tackle. No one major stands out, but again, won't kill him. Aaron Donald at D end and some depth. If Perriman can kind of bounce back, he could have a decent linebacking core, but otherwise just a little bit above average. William Jackson, really only one to speak of at corner. And then Simmons and Woods at safety. So, and then about $13.5 million in cap space. So, offense is looking pretty good. Front 7 is looking average to above average. Back 4 needs some work. But point is, if we're talking about the back 4 being where your weakness is, you're probably not that far out of the wild card hunt here.
Yeah, like they are a good, young, correctly built team, in my opinion. They have one player who is overpaid, in my opinion, and that's Mariota. But that's just because I'm of the mindset that there are 0 players in this league that deserve more than $24 million. Big fat 0. So it's something you'll never see on my team. But he made the right move by taking Allen when he fell to him, I think. Because if Allen comes in, plays this year, and shows that he can be a dependable NFL quarterback, that gives him the ability to move Mariota to a team in a year or two when we get those big splurges in tax space. And that Mariota is going to be worth money because he's a dependable NFL starter.
Yep.
Even if he doesn't score a bunch like some other guys, some team is going to have the cap space, and the other players on their roster think, you know what, I'm a quarterback away. What can I trade that can get me Marcus Mariota and help me put my team over the top? And he's going to have that. And then he's just got tons of depth. And they're all, it's not old depth either. It's young. Like, I've got a bunch of rookies. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rookies on his team. And he's basically taking the shotgun approach. He's like, hey, I'm going to just throw all this out there, grab as much talent and value as I can, and hope that one of them hits. And he's in a good position because rookie salaries are cheap. If they don't hit in 2 years, he just cuts them or puts them on taxi squad, and he's good. Nothing lost on his end, really. And he got John Ross from that taxi claim on the Eagles, so his wide receiver core is even better there. So I think they're building the right way. I just hope they don't get stuck in that bog of mediocrity in the middle of the league by not getting like miss on a few players and not really hit on any studs.
No, and again, that's going to be. He's got options. And when you say hit on any studs, he's got Kamara there, so he's starting to build them cheaply. Like you said, I think Mariota is on the high end of the contracts, and I think there's going to be a market for him if he ever wants to move him. Donald is, I think, another one that probably isn't overpaid, but one that one of those that may not be a timely fit for his team. So by that I mean by the time he's ready to be good, and not good I mean great, like compete, like be in this top tier, Donald's probably going to be on the back end of his career. He's probably got a year or two into his next contract, and then the downslope begins. So is he able to trade that Donald contract for something now, especially with Donald with a DN designation, the value that brings in this league, and get some pieces back that fits the timeline of his team? But then the other risk, like you said, is if I'm trading studs for what I hope could be future studs, you take on a lot more risk in that exchange.
Yeah.
All right, now this is the second most excited I'm going to be talking about a team today, because he's like to give me a lot of shit about being unable to place his team, but I placed him. Ranked number 17, we have the Buffalo Bills. I was hoping to be able to stall this until his meetings were over, or he started listening or following or whatever. But as you guys may recall, during the draft recap, I was having a lot of trouble with where to place this team. And finally, after breaking it down to a position-by-position rankings, put him right in the middle of the pack at the 17th team. Now, some might ask, how in God's name can you put a team who has Sam Bradford and Mason Rudolph at quarterback ahead of a team that has Marcus Mariota and Josh Allen, or Eli and Tannehill? So I may have just completely blown all credibility to anyone listening. And if so, I appreciate you think I had credibility for about an hour there. Truly, you weren't paying attention to my introduction. Anyways, quick run through of the team. Bradford and Mason Rudolph at quarterback. Marshawn Lynch and Rashad Penny at running back. Receivers, a nice little collection of guys. Edelman, again, suspended for 4 games, but still there. Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, Cooper Kupp. Couple depth guys at tight end. I think Vernon Davis is there, as well as a couple other backup guys who could see some action. D-tackle is more built up of depth. Nothing really jumps out. Thomas and Fowler at the end, which is pretty nice. Good depth at linebacker, but again, some decisions to really be figured out there in terms of, I think he's basically trying to figure out who's the Ted linebacker in San Diego with some of his positions. 4 very good, I'd say, corners. So he's going to get some solid production, maybe a flex production from those corners on a weekly basis, and then also good depth from the safety position. So really like the defense, like the flex positions on offense, really of running back and receiver. The question is going to be, how long can Sam Bradford hang on to the job? If he can hang on to it for the season, I think this is a wild card team. If he can't hang on to it for the season, I think they go around 8-8, and you start seeing Eric start packing it in for next year.
Yeah, I think it's all going to depend on when Sam Bradford goes. Because if Sam Bradford goes a quarter of the way into the season, Eric's just have to go full rebuild. He's got to trade Hill. He's got to trade Garcon. He's got to trade Edelman. He's basically got to trade his entire damn team, which is going to be unfortunate for him. But I can't remember if there were any.
Well, he's got some good young guys there as well. He's got Penny. He's got Rudolph. Got Cooper Kupp. Dante Fowler is a tough contract, but a good one. And then his back 4 is solid. So, again, he's got – I wouldn't say any of these are core pieces to build around. Core, that's for you, Packers. But at the same time, it's enough for win now. So that's why I was having so much trouble ranking them, I think everyone realized that earlier. But again,
how is this team though? If instead of taking Penny at 10 or whatever, they took 10 and 28 and maybe some other piece and traded up to try and get like Darnold or Baker or Rosen or even Lamar Jackson. Like, where is this team at if they try and do that instead of just taking Penny? Because this team, I don't think he's going to be in a very good position as soon as Sam Bradford goes down, just as a building sense. Because once Bradford goes down, it's just such a difficult league to get QBs in. Like, does he go to the Eagles and try and get one of the Eagles' 2 QBs, or does he try to go to one of us that drafted a second quarterback or has a second quarterback and say, hey, what can I do to get that guy off your roster and onto mine? But I just think he's going to be in a tough spot once Bradford goes down because a lot of these guys, again, like Dallas, have an expiration date on them.
Well, I think what he does, to be honest, is he takes Penny or one of these, or Cup or something in his first round pick, and maybe Mason Rudolph. Again, if he goes to the Cowboys and says, "Look, here's my first rounder, Mason Rudolph and Cooper Kupp for Phillip Rivers," who says no?
I think that'd be a good trade for both parties for sure.
Again, you do that, and then you end up with Bradford and Rivers. So you're solidified at the quarterback position. You give up a couple of points in kind of the future depth at the receiver position. But I think he wants to hold and see, like, again, if Rosen wins the job outright, then what's the point? Like, Marshawn Lynch, Pierre Garçon, like, the offense isn't going to give him enough points to really be competitive, so he can just keep the team he has and end up with probably a top 12 pick. But then, we're at that same point of top 12 isn't going to get you a good quarterback next year.
No, not at all.
So
you need to be like top 3 in this league to get a good quarterback.
Yeah. So again, it's I'm not quite sure. So I'm with you. I think there's still a trade to be made, but to Eric's point, I think he doesn't know what trade that is yet.
Right.
Again, the other side of this is Bradford could come out and just light things up, go full Drew Brees on things, and say, look, I've been bouncing around and I've had some injury issues, but I'm in the right spot now, and I'm just gonna rip shit up. If he does that, then Rosen's not taking that job. It's going to be kind of a Brees Rivers situation. But again, I don't think Bradford is Brees, and I don't think Rosen is Rivers. So I think there's still one more trade before we know exactly where this team's going. But for now, I've got him pegged in the 17th spot.
Seems reasonable.
All right. Down to 16. So we're in the top half of the power ranks. You good? You need a break? You need a commercial break or anything?
No, I'm good.
Good, man. Continuing along, 16, we have the 49ers. Another team that, again, is really made up by a couple of big contracts, but has those in some good spots. I think also had the offseason not exactly break his way, but I think is right there that could, if a couple of the rookies break correctly, make the jump. If not, then, it's going to be another year down or probably another one of these teams that is looking to rebuild. Anyways, quick overview. Quarterbacks, Brees and Foles. Running backs, Rojo and Mack. Receivers, Hilton, Gallup, Marquise Lee, and Demaryius Thomas. Has Herndon at tight end, but I think he got popped for a Dewey. So really no tight end at the moment. D-tackle, he's got Sue in depth. Wolf and Hubbard at the end. Again, Wolf being that 3-4 end and Hubbard being a rookie, kind of average. Miles Jack and Jalen Smith at linebacker, so above average there. 3 decent corners, so probably about average production on that position. And then Jones and Edmonds at safety, but does have about $10.5 million in contract space at the moment. So, again, I like what this team could be if Rojo lives up to the hype and Matt can lock down that running back role. Because, again, all he has to do is he's got $10.5 million to fill some spots at tight end and on defense. And if he does that, he's probably one of the NFC wildcards. If he doesn't, and Rojo's in kind of the satellite back role, and it really is committee in Indy, I think this is probably a team that misses the playoffs, but is in that like pick 17 range. That again, you're kind of at that first shot at defense or what's left over of offense.
Sounds about right. Obviously, you already touched on the hole with tight end, which is just a massive gaping pit. I think there you just really have to hope like Ladarius Green gets signed by the Chargers or something, and that fills out that role there. But I like the team overall. It's just he's got to have guys come in and produce well, but it's not like this team's going to be. Obviously, Drew Brees has his expiration date, but I think he's good enough, and he's Drew Brees, that he'll play out at least another year or two. So that gives Niners another year to add another piece of talent, maybe on the defensive side or at tight end, to try and really affirm this team as a true playoff team. But with what they have now, with that NFC West, I think they could kind of bum enough wins off of the Rams and Seahawks to squeeze out a wild card berth.
No, exactly. I think they're going to need some help, like I said, from the running back, receiver, and linebacker positions to really make that jump and secure the wild card, but I think they're going to be in the conversation. All right. Anyways, team number 15, the last of this middle class tier. Edge of your seat. It is the Miami Dolphins. Quick overview: Big Ben at quarterback, Mixon and Jones at running back. The only 10 I gave for receivers was this group: Keenan Allen, AJ Green, and Christian Kirk. Tight end Delaney Walker. A sort of collection of depth pieces at D tackle. Bennett, and then not much else at the end. Smith in depth at linebacker. Really seemed to double down on the Miami and Seattle corners, but not necessarily the good ones at corner. And then nothing really to speak of at safety. So another one of these teams that is stacked on offense, but not so much on defense. And again, if some of this stuff hits, if Bennett steps in and is just a beast with that front four with Philly, I think, this could be, and then Miami and Seattle's secondaries are able to kind of bounce back. This is a team that's in the mix to win the AFC East. If, again, the defense is just average and Big Ben starts going the way of the dodo bird, this is a team that's in purgatory, like that 18th pick, and not really a playoff team.
Yeah, I think this is where we get into that tier of teams that do have the high-powered enough offense to carry the large question marks they have on defense. Mm-hmm. It seems like this dude has the same problem I have at defensive tackle, where it's I need defensive tackle and I just don't have any production. Because him and I kept going back on Jaheed Ward, and then one of the group chats, I think it was Jets, was like, Matt, why are you bidding up Jaheed Ward? He sucks. I was like, no, he doesn't. He's good. He's our lads. He's the second defensive tackle on that team. He's going to get points. And then I went and watched some tape, and God, does that dude suck. So I'm very appreciative to Miami for saving me for that, and thank you. I'm very, very thankful to the Jets for talking me out of spending that money on him, which ended up giving me the money to bring back Jordy Nelson instead. So it's just that dude, he needs help at defensive tackle, and he needs a lot of help at defensive end. Because I'm on the inverse side of you as Bennett, where I don't think Bennett's going to be scoring many points at all in Philly. I think Philly's defensive line is going to be so stacked that anybody that plays on that line, except for a couple guys, are going to be basically unstartable. But it's a best ball league, so if he was like your second or third defensive end, I'd be perfectly fine with it. With him being his number one defensive end, I'd be concerned. So he needs to hope that Looney or Easley or DeMarcus Walker, one of those three, because it's not going to be Randy Gregory, one of those three needs to step up and be like a dependable Like not even like high flying defensive end, just like a guy he can depend on to be a defensive end 2 or 3 in this league, which would be a starter for most teams. The dependable guy for him, which I don't think is going to happen, unfortunately. But hopefully for him, his wide receivers can carry that, which they reasonably should, since he's got Keenan. Basically everyone on that in that wide receiver score is going to be scoring startable points, except for maybe Moore. Maybe he might too, though. But who knows with Green Bay wide receivers?
No, I think you're spot on. Honestly, with Bennett, like I said, the potential of Moore is there, but I don't think it happens, especially the way that Philly likes to play. They like to rotate their guys, and you never know which of the 7 are going to end up getting the sack this week. So really, it should be that second or third D end on a team. So if he's able to add one more piece, like say Robert Quinn in front of him, I think it's a much better situation. And if I remember correctly, he has $13.5 million to go to do something like that. So that's I think the common theme of the last 3 members of the middle class here. I think maybe the last 4 members of the middle class. The first couple, I think we agree, are a couple pieces away, but in this tier. Whereas the last 4, it's if they make that one trade that fills the one really big hole they have, whether it's for the Seahawks in terms of the Seahawks are building the right way, so they're probably not a trade away. The Bills, it's that quarterback. The 49ers, it's tight end and some stability at the running back position. And then for the Dolphins, it's that D end and then some of the back 4 positions. If they're able to kind of fill those 2 spots, they're firmly in the wild card race. If not, they could find themselves in purgatory drafting around like that the 15 to 18 range.
I definitely think this is a team that is going to have to part at some point from Keenan or AJ to get away or to get a quarterback.
Well, I mean that's the trouble here is, which Big Ben do you believe? The Big Ben this offseason that said that he's good for 4 more years, or the one last year who said, well, I think I'm probably done after this year. So
I believe in the Big Ben that's going to play for another year at a top level and then is going to continue to play for another 3 years at a lower level.
Yeah. So again, if that's the case, then he has some time, but not much.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, as I said, that was the last team of the middle class. Next, we've got the in the hunt tier, as I've been calling them. So, what I mean here is these are the teams we expect to be competing for the wild card. One could make the jump into the title contenders, but these are the teams that we expect to be talking about as playoff contenders at the end of the season. First and foremost is a team that was pretty close between whether I put them in this group or the previous group, but some stuff I saw on Twitter in terms of certain players' recovery helped me move them up into this group. So I believe this is the 14th ranked team at this point. I have as the Jacksonville Jaguars. Really, again, I was debating putting them in the middle class based off of Wentz's recovery, but the fact he's playing golf and is starting to move around without major braces or otherwise makes me think he's going to be ready for week 1. And if so, this is a team that's ready to roll. He's, again, the top piece on offense, and again, one of those elite pieces to build around at quarterback. Nothing major at running back. I think there's still probably a piece that needs to be added before he's a real wildcard contender, but based off the strength of the rest of his team, I'm willing to put him there for now. Receivers, again, cheap options that produce in Aguilar and Matthews that I really like. Added James Washington as well. Has that tight end problem as well with Garrett Selleck, who I think is the second string tight end on San Francisco. So might want to look to upgrade there. D-tackle, you got Richardson. And then you have his DNs with Bosa and Henry. So that's going to be kind of beastly.
And Mac.
What's that?
And Mac.
And Mac, yeah. Oh, yeah, Mac got moved there. That's right. I had Mac in the linebacking group before. But I'm of the opinion that Mac's going to end up as a linebacker anyway. I'm not going to get too excited here. I think you're going to see a lot of teams trying to trade Mac at D-end over the next month or so, saying, look, he's a D-end and get him now.
I know Jets just posted, I think, was he in here? Yeah, Khalil Mack. Nah, Khalil Mack just got moved from linebacker to defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know, but just happened. But if you remember, I think it was last year, there's something similar that happened where a lot of players got moved from linebacker to D end and D end to D tackle. And then once training camp opened, got moved back from D tackle to D end and then from D end to linebacker. And a bunch of guys were like, oh shit. So honestly, I think, I'm saying this, I'm not buying Mack anywhere because I think he's going to end up with that linebacker designation. I think I will buy him at a linebacker price, but I think you're going to start seeing people asking for, I'll call it my first round pick here for Khalil Mack, and that's just not something that, I think is a price worth paying right now. So, anyways, if I'm wrong, then Bosa, Mack, and Henry, whole fuck. But whether Mack plays linebacker or D end, very solid piece there. Corners look good. Hayward and some good depth, and then with Burnett and Quinn, strong at safety. So this is one of the first teams and built like the Jaguars, carried by their defense, although Wentz is a hell of a lot better than Bortles. Really, you got two things. They add a better tight end. They add maybe one piece at running back, and this is a team that's definitely making the playoffs, in my opinion.
I can agree on that. They're definitely at least right on the bubble there. I'm not quite as set as you are about them making it.
Well, not right now. If they add the running back and the tight end, then I think they do. But I don't think they're quite there yet.
Yeah, they're definitely right on the bubble, though.
Yep. But again, I think they've got, let's see, $7.5 million. So not a ton of money to play with, but enough money that they can add those two pieces without too much effort, I think. All right. Another team. Here's another team you're going to be interested in. 13. Lucky number 13. Who do you think it is?
Who do I think's at 13? I'm hoping it's me. Because I like 13, and I like hearing that I'm in the hunt.
Well, you haven't been named yet, so I mean.
I know. I'm happy. I'm happy where I'm at now, at least. Like, you could name me here, and I'd be perfectly content, because that means I've done my job correctly. But lucky number 13, I'm probably Chiefs. Maybe. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So quick overview: Watson at quarterback, Gore and some depth at running back, Jones, Nelson, and some depth at. Wait, no, he cut Nelson. Okay, so dings him a little bit there, but again, probably an average receiving core. Tight end, he's got Ebron and then Schultz, and Schultz is getting some love post draft as a potential heir apparent to Witten. He tackle, he picked up Crawford off of waivers, but again, a little bit to do there. Brockers plus at the DN position. Strong linebacker with Alexander and Williamson, especially like with Williamson stepping in for the Jets. Corner, White in depth. White did really well last year. And then he's got Eddie and Adams at safety. But probably the best part about this team is he's a playoff edge team, and he's got $18.5 million in cap space. So he's going to add another stud here, I think, before the season starts. It's just a question of where, because again, I think the cap floor will eat up most of that 18.5 if he doesn't use it. So it behooves him to grab another piece. It's just a question of, does he go after receiver to push Jones to that wide receiver 2 role instead of wide receiver 1? Same question with Gore, pushing to a flex role instead of the starting running back. Is he content going with a tight end by committee, or does he try and shore up D tackle? I think there's a bunch of things he could shore up, but I think it's a pretty solid team top to bottom.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions he'll have, like just depending on like where people end up, what happens to DeMarco Murray, like just how things shake out for him. But I'd be fairly happy if I was him with the way he's structured his team to be like a redraft team every year. I don't think it's going to be too effective long term, but I think it might work for this year and next year. Just at least keeping him like involved and possibly in the hunt on a yearly basis. I don't ever think he'll build a contender or anything out of it, but it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out for him.
No, agreed. I mean, he's got Watson, so that helps. Had to go pay up for him in the offseason. I forget what he had to trade. I think it was Bengals who had him, but
he traded Chandler Jones for him, which was kind of rough for him, just because of how good that contract was for Jones.
No, definitely. And we'll talk about the Bengals a little bit later, but I like that trade for both sides. Unfortunately, it's a hell of a stat to give up.
Yeah.
All right, enough about him. Let's move on to another team that I'm not sure if he's probably listening live since he's driving all over America, or if he's going to listen later because he's going to need something to put him to sleep or keep him awake or something. But 12th ranked team we've got on here, the Indianapolis Colts. Team that definitely went with the stud approach in a couple of points, but is smartly filling it in the back end with some good depth. Quick overview: you've got Stafford at quarterback, DJ's coming back at running back with some depth behind him. Took the first two receivers in the draft. I think it was Moore and Ridley for his receivers. Plus, he's got Taylor and Kevin White behind him. Some new starters, Luke Wilson and I believe it's Nick Vannett. Both should start for their respective teams this year. So depending on how that goes for them, he could have a very good tight end core or be left without a starter. So I've kind of graded accordingly there. Kawan Short at the tackle, Anton JPP at the end, Clowney and Simon at linebacker, Dory Jackson with his returning prowess and everything has been a godsend for him at corner, although he's had to pay for it, as well as Fuller. And then some good collection of safeties, as well as $9 million in cap space. So I think of the rankings, this is 12. So this would be, by a ranking perspective, the first playoff team for sure. But I know that I don't think we have an honest 6-6 to go. So, but either way, this is probably the first team that really feels like a playoff team to me. The others still have holes. I think, if the rookies produce, I kind of expect the rookies to produce, kind of call it, say, 50 receptions, 650 yards, 4 touchdowns apiece. I think this is a team that's in the playoffs.
Yeah, if he can get staggered production out of Moore, Ridley, and Fountain, he'll be really good at wide receiver now, especially with Trent Taylor taking on more of a workload with Jimmy G coming in and being more built in there. And maybe he gets lucky and Kevin White starts producing as well. But I definitely I know I tried to make moves with him to get more and Ridley onto my team for some of my my wide receiver depth. I'm trying to be like, hey, I've got Allen Robinson. I can give you him, and he's a bona fide stud. I'll give you this other depth, and we can make a deal here. But he's pretty set where he's at, and I can respect that. I definitely think it's going to end up working out for him if he gets lucky. And assuming they're just normal rookie wide receivers that don't just pop right off, then if he gets lucky and they they stagger their big production weeks, I think he'll be in a really good spot. The main issue I think you run into would be those rookies all producing the same weeks, which would be kind of unfortunate for him and would limit his total win upside. But I think if they stagger a little bit, he'll be in really good shape.
No, most definitely. I'm just checking here to see. 5, 6. Yep. Okay, so next up, we've got the 11th ranked team. And this is actually my first division winner based off of the ranks. So as mentioned, I see this as kind of a tight division, but I think the team who won it last year is probably the front runner to win it this year, and that's the New York Jets. So the 11th ranked team, Jets. Quick overview: Goff on a very affordable contract, a hodgepodge of running backs. I'm not exactly sure who really stands out there. Receiving core has gotten a lot better than it was. I think I'm directly responsible for this since I traded him both Adams and Shepard. So he's got Adams, Shepard, and Snead. Tight ends, Ingram and RSJ. nothing really to write home about from the D tackle or D end perspective. Deion Jones is his stud in the linebacker core as well as in depth. Really went the target approach with the corners he's got here. Guys who are going to get thrown the ball a lot, but therefore likely put up some points that way. And then as a Jets homer, made sure he picked up Marcus May. So also not a lot of cap space to speak of. I think it's about $1.5 million at the moment. But his receivers have rebuilt admirably. His running backs are in a bit of a tough spot. But the rest of the offense is solid, and his linebacking core is enough that I think he'll probably win the East.
Yeah, I think like he's done just enough to win that division, I think. Goff's good. I like his contract. I'm interested to see how Dante Foreman shapes up for him. I'm not sure what trade y'all made there, but I assume it was probably a fairly reasonable one on both ends.
Yeah, so I picked up. So here's kind of the busyness that I had in one day. I basically turned Jonnu in pieces into Travis Kelce, traded Kelce straight up for Devonta Adams, and then moved Adams and Foreman for Hopkins.
Okay, yeah, that's a good. I think that trade helps both y'all because that gives him more usable depth now, and that gives you that stud that you can really pound the pavement on either keeping or selling at some point when somebody gets a lot of money from an injury or something.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I think Foreman was a guy who I just couldn't sell, to be honest. I was trying to sell him pre-draft as the heir apparent when everyone was assuming Lamar Miller would get cut. Like, hey, it's the heir apparent and he's cheap. Come get him for a first-round pick, and I couldn't get it. So then it was maybe a late first round, a future first. I couldn't get it. Then a second, and I couldn't get it. And then it was maybe 2 future seconds, and I still couldn't get it. So it was kind of like, all right, if an $8 million contract that basically makes up the difference between Nuke and Adams, I got to pick Nuke. So I did that, but then at the same time, he gets the potential upside if Miller does get cut into this year next year. He's got the starter in, or at least one who's probably taking a good share of the carries, workhorse carries for sure in Houston. So I agree. I think it's a win-win, but from my perspective, I was happy to make that deal.
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely think you're in a better position because of it, but I think they match each team composition very well.
Yep. The point is, Santi, you're welcome. We were also in this doubles league. I don't know if we've mentioned it to you, but basically it's 2v2 all over the place. So Santi is my doubles partner there. So
yeah,
that's for you, doubles partner. Anyway, so I have him coming out of the East. That's the first division leader, but it also should say something that I have him as the 11th ranked team. I have the Dolphins, and I think the 14th ranked team. The Dolphins are I think the 14, 15th ranked team. Bills 17, and Patriots I think were 22. So not a lot of space between those guys right now. So I would not be shocked if Santi had trouble hanging on to this division.
Yeah.
Anyways, who's ready for the top 10?
I'm always ready. I was born ready. Born ready and wet.
Kinky. Anyways, number 10. It's everyone's favorite chat member, the Buccaneers. Ended up so again, thanks to one of my 50 trades during draft time, picked up a replacement quarterback with Dalton. Still has Bell and Cohen. Very invested in the running back position, but better than when he had Bell and McCoy. Has Baldwin and Tate, which is much better receiving core than he had to start the draft. I think he, as well as quite a few other dynasty owners, are hoping that Everett is able to rise up and take that starting tight end role in Los Angeles. D-tackle, Ellis. He's got quite a few Philly pass rushers, as well as now Marcus Davenport from May. His linebacking core is Mosley and friends because C.J. Mosley is nothing to scoff at, plus some pretty good guys around him. So a very strong linebacking core. Again, some very quality corners, but maybe too good that they might not be thrown out as much as they should be. Then safeties of Justin Evans and Ioka. So $2.5 million of cap space. The only areas of weakness I really see on this team are tight end and safety. But otherwise, I think this is a pretty solid team top to bottom. But unfortunately, based off of team we'll talk about here in just a minute, I don't think he's going to end up winning the South.
Yeah, I think it's a solid team, but it's lacking something. I'm not sure what it is. I guess it's really just that offensive flex spot. And like he doesn't have, outside of Mosley, he's not going to have any real stud guys. Maybe Marcus Davenport really is a stud for him, but he doesn't have any guys outside of that, and he's not super depthy. So I think it'll be interesting. He's got plenty of wide receiver and tight end talent that could produce for him. Just between all those rookies, maybe he hits a diamond into the rough type guy that pops off every couple of weeks on special team something. But I'm not too sold on anyone that he's got as rookies outside of Davenport, but that was an expensive Davenport for him. So hopefully in his case it plays out, but I'm not crazy about the pick. But yeah, I mean, I definitely see that as like a bubble playoff team, or like an in the playoffs, but like if things don't work out well, could easily fall out type deal.
Yeah, exactly. It's a beatable playoff team for sure. Especially and again from a long term perspective, what happens with Bell? Can Everett really ascend? And then the front four. I agree with your assessment there. So, like I said, starting with the Colts, it's started to feel like playoff teams, and this definitely feels like a playoff team. But that's why they're in the hunt range, not the best of the best tier.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, moving on to number 9. We promised we were going to talk about him, and here they are, the Cincinnati Bengals. So, as mentioned, he made a very, very astute move last year, I'll say. Moving basically, I think it was a bunch of late round picks. I'd have to go back and look at the original trade. But I think basically, if I remember correctly, the Texans had bought Watson as their auction pick, but then traded him to the Bengals for like a 5th round pick or something like that to get the space back because they had some buyer's remorse. So basically, Bengals carried Trubisky and Watson last year, and then was able, as mentioned, to flip Watson for Chandler Jones, which is just an absurd player on an absurd contract. So that being said, that's really vaulted him to a top 10 team, in my opinion. Quarterback, Trubisky, running back, Gurley and Jackson, paying $30 million for Gurley on a franchise tender, but definitely worth it. 2 elite, I'd say, receivers in Cooks and Evans. Tight end is still a big question mark since Henry went down, so he's got Derby there. But again, he's still, I guess, in the hunt for the – no, wait, Derby's in Miami. I was going to say he's in the hunt for the Denver role, but not so much. He's got Gerald McCoy and some depth, so he's very solid at D-tackle. As mentioned, he's got Chandler Jones and depth at the end, so very good there. Picked probably the 2 of the top middle linebacker rookies in Van Der Esch and what's his name? Smith. So again, he's got a rising linebacker core because they're rookies that can't go too highly. And then Neal plus at a safety, and then some decent corners. I think this is one of those teams that is on that high end of the wild card teams. It's a wild card team, I think, but it's a wild card team that I don't think I'd want to play.
Yeah, if Hunter Henry was still around, I'd be very concerned as a team playing against him. And I'm very happy I'm in the AFC and probably also going to be in a position to where I'd be playing a wild card like him. But if both of those rookie linebackers hit and produce well, like this is going to be a very scary team. I definitely think they're the type that can maybe push for like a real contending spot there. it'd be interesting for sure, especially with that division. You got Steelers, Browns. I don't believe you mentioned Browns earlier, right? With
Yeah, Browns were in one of
Yeah.
the bottom spots as for the Ravens. So
Yeah.
I think it's really between him and the Steelers.
Mhm.
For posterity, if I put Henry as healthy on this team, he's in the top three.
Yeah.
But without Henry, that drops him. Well, he's in the top three for the net. The overall, he's in the top four. So,
Yeah.
again,
That's a spooky team.
yeah, again, it's one that's rising. The fun part is going to be is Gurley's on that franchise tender. So it's kind of this is the year window. Otherwise, he knows he needs to rebuild a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see the lengths he's willing to go to make it happen. I think he's already moved his picks for next year too. So he's a wily one. I think Lewis was trolling him at first and saying he was one of the worst. Like I think he had ranked myself and Bengals as two of the worst owners in the league before we started the draft. He nailed it with me, but Bengals I think is one of those teams that he needs to be scared of here for this year.
Yeah, it's like if Hunter Henry doesn't go down, like that is a scary team.
Yep.
And that's still like tight end's a position where like as soon as he can get Henry onto IR, that's 14. He's gonna have like 15 million in cap, right? Just shy of 16. So
you only get
he's
half
knocking around,
right?
Huh?
I think you only get half back for IR.
I thought IR you got all of it.
I took a quick look at bylaws, injured reserve. IR player salary is counted as 50% against the salary.
Okay, 50. So 8 million. You'd have
He
8 million to play with.
But again, that's something to scoff at.
Yeah, no, that's plenty of room to make a move with one of those bottom teams to try and get some tight end play, which shouldn't realistically be too hard if he can get like maybe he goes to Bills and be like, hey, you're selling Ben Watson, give me him. And Eric will be like, well, what are you gonna give me? And Bills and Bengals gonna be like, I'll let you enjoy looking at my team in the playoffs. Eric,
okay. Anyways, all right. So that's number 9. Number 8, another regular guest on the podcast here, and who I have as the winner of the NFC South this year, and person who has not just definitively shot down any of my advances from D Hop has basically told me no uncertain terms if I send him another offer, he's sending a flaming bag of shit to my house. That would be the Falcons.
I love Brian so much.
I do appreciate it, though. Look, I mean, I shoot a bunch of offers out there, and it's nice to actually get some definitive response like, look, I have no interest in making this move. Just, okay, great. I don't have to waste my time then. But anyways, I think Brian is the favorite in the NFC South for a couple of reasons, and I'll touch on those as I go through his roster. With both a starting quarterback in Keenum as well as a top quarterback in Rosen for this year's draft, have him as above average, if not quite elite, at the quarterback position. Also picked up Geis to pair with Barber and Ware, who I think were good committee guys as well. So he should be pretty good from a best ball perspective at running back. Between Davis, Cam Meredith, Dez, and John Brown. Not the best receiving core, but strong enough that it should keep him afloat. Talked about Vance McDonald versus Jesse James earlier. McDonald did have that big playoff performance, so I think there are a lot of people who are on that. If nothing else, is at least average 10M performance. You got Jarrett and Brian at the tackle, Yannick and Barnett at the end. A pretty good linebacking core that's really on the rise. I couldn't list them all just because I didn't have enough space in my spreadsheet here, but definitely nothing to scoff at. Corner is average, but I think he's done that on purpose. And then finally, Clinton Dix as well as some depth with about $3 million in cap space. So top to bottom, this team's ready to roll. I think they're winning the South, and they don't have one of the buys in the NFC. I think they would be the 3 seed there.
They also added Amir Abdul at running back. Sorry, so that's even more firepower there for him on offense. So I think that helps him a lot.
Targeting that second running back in a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm. Like he's done what my idea was, and basically just like pushed it to the limit, which was I'm just gonna get a bunch of pass catching running backs, and he's like, okay, I'll do that, and I'll go get guys, and I'll go get 2 more than you. And it's like he's done really well at it. I really like his team a lot, and it's built to where it can weather multiple years without having a whole lot of change. Like his biggest contract, I think, is Dez. Yeah, it is Dez.
It's Dez. I'm trying to take Dez off his team, but he won't trade him to me. So
those points, man, the possible points.
It's true. It's true. All right, we're on to the last team of the in the hunt tier. We have 6 players in I would call it the title contenders, but we're now talking about the 7th place team. Who do we think is the 7th place team here? I'll give you a chance to guess.
Me?
Nope.
Whoa. Okay. It's not Bears. I think you touched on Lions already, right?
Yep.
Shit. Giants?
Nope, it's the Green Bay Packers.
Okay. Jeremy. Poor Jeremy.
I couldn't put him in the elite tier. I had to give him something to try for. If nothing else, he's going to appreciate that.
True.
But anyways, we've got the Packers as the 7th ranked team. Quick overview, he gets Rodgers back at quarterback, as well as Brian Hoyer if anything goes wrong with Brady. Traded up to get Chubb, so he's got the hiding Chubb there. He's hiding the Chubb. No, hey, I got jokes. Is in win now from the wide receiver perspective with Fitz, Alshon, and Juwan Brown. ASJ and Cook at tight end should be solid. Probably 2 starters there. 2 good producers at D tackle. Depth really at the DM position. Probably could use an upgrade if he had pieces to upgrade with. Linebacker with Brown and Barron. I think especially with Ogletree gone, Barron is primed for an uptick in terms of usage. And then Brown as well. Jalen Ramsey, probably a bit overpaid, but at the same time, quite scary and quite involved in that team. Regardless of the fact that he's been a shutdown corner last year, he still got thrown at plenty, enough that he put up points. And then Davis at safety. He's only got about $1 million in cap space, but really the only things that I'd be worried about for upgrading for him would be safety, D end, and then maybe adding a running back if he could on the cheap. But look, this team is ready to roll. Like I said, it's just slightly, in my opinion, a step below the next tier of teams.
Yeah, I think his biggest issue is definitely going to be defensive end, which is kind of – I doubt we'll see any other teams in this next tier that are going to have the issues of defensive end, which would probably set him apart from them. But like everywhere else on defense, he's pretty solid. Maybe he could get some love at cornerback and safety, but he's good at linebacker, plenty of depth. Get a defensive tackle. I wish I could have one of those 2 guys. I just would do anything to get one of those dudes. But like everywhere else, he's pretty well off. Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is overpaid, but he'll be playing this year, hopefully. So he also will hopefully be playing or scoring a bunch of points. That's a plus for him.
Well, for Jeremy's sanity, I hope he is, because I think he owns Rodgers in probably about 60 to 70% of his leagues. So if Rodgers isn't playing this year, then Jeremy's not going to be involved, and that's just less fun for everybody because he's just
Rodgers
to rag on.
Rodgers is Jeremy's Patrick Mahomes. Or my Rodgers is to Jeremy as Pat is to me, except for the part where Aaron Rodgers is like 4 times or was 4 times expensive in the past year or so than Pat. So it's been like, if Pat busts for me, there's a lot of teams I have that are screwed, but it's not like it cost me a lot.
Yep. All right. We're to the best of the best. The elite division, the teams that I'm very sorry to say I'm going to curse by saying that you are the teams in the title hunt. So sorry, I'm not sorry. But these 6 teams are in no particular order: the Cardinals, the Chargers, the Steelers, the Bears, the Texans, and the Giants. That's what we have left. Again, at this point, you're not really seeing any major weaknesses on any of these teams. I think the lowest grade I have on any position for them is a 5, which would be average. So really, you're talking above average production at each position, and then a lot of elite production at some of the important positions. So coming in at number 6, the projected by me winner of the NFC North, the Chicago Bears.
You're doing him dirty. He's going to be upset.
I hope so.
He will be.
Look, I mean, let me go through the roster, and then I can defend this case, even though I'm sure to be wrong. But again, who the hell cares? Because A, this is based on nothing.
Hey! I'm not saying I disagree with you.
Yeah,
not saying
B, I disagree with you. I'm the 32nd ranked team. But let's be frank about this. Quarterback, how comfortable is anybody with Joe Flacco as their starting quarterback right now? With RG3 signed as the sort of protector of Jackson, and then Jackson's the heir apparent, Flacco's maybe got this year left, and if things don't start well for him, could be replaced at the bye week. So anytime that you've got a quarterback who very easily could be replaced at the bye week, you can't feel great about that. So I got Flacco as just about above average for him. He's got a great committee of Lewis, Booker, and CJ Anderson. 7 just good best ball options. I'm not going to list them all, but he's got 7 players who could score at receiver for him, which is just dirty. With Burton getting his standalone role in Chicago, it's very nice, as well as Doyle getting the splitsies with Ebron. So should be pretty well set up there. D-tackle, Goldman and Coley. Calais, just a beast in Jacksonville. Should continue to be with some depth as well. Very strong pass rush depth. I think it was either you or Brian who made the comment we were going team by team that said it was really interesting that he went kind of that 3-4 backer instead of that middle linebacker that a lot of people go. And by stockpiling a lot of those, basically whenever somebody has a sack, they start for him that week. So very unique and sort of innovative approach there. 3 solid corners. He's never going to have an issue with a starting corner, as well as 3 good safeties there. So, look, his defense is, I would say, superior to his offense. And from a best ball perspective, he's got running back and wide receiver nailed. It's just going to be how long does Flacco stay the starter for whether or not he goes very far in the playoffs. Because, again, if the Ravens are 6-6, at what point do they plug in Jackson to say, what can you do for us? So if that happens, then that kills him in the playoffs. But again, it's why I can't put him any higher than 6th.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely buy that. Because I didn't, to be totally honest with you, I didn't even think about Flacco being replaced this season. I thought it would be more of like he gets replaced after this season. And then Bears has the idea that Flacco will get signed somewhere as a like bridge quarterback or something, kind of like Alex Smith has since he got traded from San Francisco. But instead of getting traded, he just gets signed places. So I didn't even think about Flacco going down in season as a quarterback, but that would definitely destroy that team, just because you can't win without a QB, no matter how good you are at waiver wire pickups and best ball quarterback or wide receivers and running backs and defensive ends and linebackers. Like, his team is set up great. And I think if he had any QB that you for sure could say he's going to start all season, I definitely think he'd be much higher. But I definitely buy your reasoning for why you have him at 6.
And let me put it this way: there's a pretty tight one sort of 6 through 4. It's really a matter of like 4 or 5 points in terms of my weightings, and the top ranked team I have here is at 188. So it's as close as it gets. So a point either direction kind of sways it pretty heavily for these top teams. But point is, with Flacco and with a position that important, you can't really think that that again, if he makes it this season, he's going to be higher than 6th. But it's the uncertainty around that. I can't do it, especially with some of the other quarterbacks in the top 5. Anyways, talking about top 5. So here, left we have Giants, Steelers, Chargers, Texans, and Cardinals. Who do you think is the 5th ranked team?
Me again. It should be me. What is going through your brain? Texans?
You were right. It's the Texans.
You are a crazy man, Mike.
Look, I will talk about your team when it's time to talk about your team. Anyways, Texans. We've got Russell Wilson, elite quarterback, but not a whole lot of stuff behind him if anything goes wrong for Russell. But again, this is going to be an interesting year for Russell with the transition, ideally, from what we're hearing from the coaching staff, more towards the running game. So do they pass less? I don't think so. But again, he's still an elite quarterback, so he's an above-average elite option there. Howard and Miller, so 2 strong running backs. Cooper Gordon in depth, so some elite options as well as some depth at wide receiver. And then he's got Houston outside of the guy they drafted at tight ends as well as a couple of rookies. So a little bit of weakness at tight end. Clark, I think it's Frank Clark at D tackle. Depth at that defensive end. I think this is his biggest weakness, is a lack of really solid defensive end starting.
Very shallow.
Great depth at linebacker. 2 good but not great corners. And then the best safety I see for him is Peppers. But that said, with $500,000 in cap space, he doesn't really have a lot of maneuvering room to make any improvements. So I think because he's got a more stable quarterback situation, I'm comfortable putting him at 5 over the Bears, and I think he's going to be the team to beat in the South for AFC. But that defense, between the defensive end, lack of depth, again, he may not get a good week out of his corners on a week-to-week basis, and with Peppers at safety, Peppers is trending more as a bust than as a productive player at this point. And he doesn't have the cap space to fix anything at the moment. So
he's really got to hope that Tart is the stud that people in San Francisco are thinking he is, because that or Peppers has to start stepping up as a in-the-box safety type.
Yeah. So again, it's the defense is where the question marks fall for that team, but the offense has very few except for tight end. And again, someone's got to catch passes at tight end in Houston, and he seems to have that pretty well covered. All right, I'm not going to let you guess anymore because you ran out of my...
I'm just going to keep guessing myself because I think I should have gone like 10 picks ago.
All right, number 4, we have the Cardinals, winner of the NFC West. Again, greatly benefiting from Jimmy G and that contract and the ability to really leverage the 4 games that he started in New England, as well as the spot starts here or there to lower that contract. But point being... got Jimmy G at quarterback, Ingram even though he's suspended, Mike Davis, Crowell, and Rod Smith and Jizrod as some good best ball guys. Landry, Hogan especially, now that Edelman's been suspended for 4 games. Sanders in depth, so good receiving core. Greg Olsen should be back, and then Deion Sims may get some spot catches in Chicago. Hand in depth, again, not a great D tackle, but not terrible. DeMarcus Lawrence, Jones, and Sheard is just mean at the defensive end position. Hightower coming back is going to help his linebacking core, as well as Lee and Brown. Corner could use a little bit of help. Shaq Griffin, not the best option, and again, could use a little bit more behind him. And then Honey Badger and some depth at safety. But again, $3.5 million in cap space, not a ton to play with. But I think the offense is studly. I think the defensive front seven is strong enough. It's going to be a matter of what he can do at, say, D tackle as well as corner to really separate himself with some of these other players.
Yeah, I mean, like his defensive ends and linebackers should be plenty enough to make up for his defensive tackles and whatever shortcomings he has at cornerback. His team's just, it's dirty. Like he's even playing the like, let me get the best team place kicker game. Like that's when you know a team is like they've done their job everywhere else. They're able to focus on, let me go get the good kicker team. My only concern with Cardinals is just at running back. But like if for some reason Jimmy goes down, he's got CJ in the wings, so he doesn't have that same concern at quarterback that a lot of teams do. Good spread on his wide receivers. That fucking defensive end pair or grouping is just gross. Like he's got DeMarcus Lawrence at $2.18 million for 5 years. 5 years. Like that's just insane.
Yep. It's dirty. It's nasty. It's
unfair. That's unfair.
Seriously, Commish, do something about this.
Leave it to the lawyer to game the system into getting Jimmy G for 6 years for $8 million and DeMarcus Lawrence for 5 years for $2 million. Leave it to the lawyer.
Silly bastard. Anyways, we're into our top three. Left we have the Giants, the Chargers, and the Steelers. Before I announce who's third, I'm going to grab another beer. Be right back.
I have no idea how Mike has me in the top three. It's slightly absurd. I appreciate it, but...
Well, I told you, we get to your team when we get to your team.
You're a crazy man, Mike.
Like I said, I told you, we would get to your team when we got to your team.
I know.
We got to your team.
Thank Christ. It's been long enough.
Number three, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, how in God's name did I come to this conclusion? Well, because you don't have just one, I believe, starting quarterback. I think you have two, because I think Baker starts sooner rather than later. Chris Thompson, again, is a strong PPR player and some depth. I think running back's one of your positions of weakness. But then when I look at the receivers, A-Rob, Juju, and Galladay, like I think all of those guys are rising to probably an elite level receiving core. Kittle and Howard, very strong tight end position. You own both your kicker and punter. Again, who cares? D-tackle, again, another weak spot, but nothing that should hurt you too badly. Strong depth at the end. I think it's something that could be improved, but I don't think you're going to have trouble finding two good starts out of that end group. Adding Luke and Bobby. Honestly, I think you probably have, if not the best, the second best linebacking core in the league right now.
Thank you, Bills.
So that really bumped you up a good amount. I had originally put you higher, but actually coming to my senses, it dropped you a little bit because, again, both have some uncertainty in terms of what that defense really looks like in Seattle, as well as I think Luke's 2 concussions in, 1 more, and he's done. So have to price that in as well. Corner between Smith, K-Jax, and Trey Waynes, you're covered there. And then Barry and Jenkins, same kind of thing at safety. So I think your safety, your defense is strong. Outside of your running back, your offense is strong. And again, the areas that I think you're weak, you have upside at D-tackle and Chris Thompson. If anything happens to Geis, and if he plays the same role as he did last year for a full season, Thompson's running back too, and there's no question about this. So I think you're the number 3 team and one of the teams to beat. And I know I'm contradicting what I said in the, my hot take in the draft pod, but I think the Chargers win the AFC West.
Thank you. I appreciate that sentiment.
Now I apologize because I just pissed all over your season, you're likely to finish 20th.
No, personally, I think it's going to be a little bit more competitive in the AFC West. Like I think we're going to be trading a lot of blows between Chiefs, Broncos, and I. But I'm very happy with where my team is now. I don't think I'm in a position where I'm like really locked in on anything. Like I don't feel trapped. Like I know there's some teams where you look at them and it's like, okay, well, how do they get out of the situation they're currently in to try and like make future moves there? But like the guys that I have under contract long term, I like having under contract long term. Maybe the Luke contract's a little long at 6 years, but I'm not too concerned. Like a lot of people say that, like, oh, one more concussion and they're done. One more concussion and they're done. But like, how many times has that been said about Jordan Reed at this point? So, like those guys, between him and Bobby, it's made my life very easy on the defensive side because it let me focus. Because I had a massive gaping hole on the entire defensive side of my team last year. Like I had nobody that was producing well. Until I trade, like the guys my best producers on defense were guys I traded for just to get trade extensions on. And so it let me focus primarily on defensive end. And I probably should have focused a little bit more on defensive tackle, but it's kind of a crapshoot. I'm hoping Nazir Jones does enough to where like I've got a startable guy every week and I don't have to be concerned about getting points at least to the position. But I'm happy with that team. I still think you put me way too high, but I definitely understand your reasoning behind it.
Well, and it was as I was approaching the quarterback position, and again, maybe this is a flaw in my methodology, maybe it's not. I gave extra points to teams who had a second option who either was the direct handcuff or I could see stepping in. So, for example, I had let me see here. I had Russell Wilson got an 8 out of 10 for me, but there's no backup behind him. So I also put Baker and Mahomes as an 8 as well because by week 6, I could see you getting the benefit of either of those who had the better week as your quarterback. And because I'm also a believer in streaming quarterbacks, I think that if I knew or if I had the hindsight ability to put the better score of the two of those players in from week 6, 7, 8 on, that Baker and Mahomes would outscore Wilson. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. So, by the same token, again, I put by himself Cousins at a 7, but then I put Eli and Tannehill at a 7 as well, because if I knew who between Eli and Tannehill was going to score better on a week-to-week basis, I think the combination of those best scores would outscore Cousins. So, that being said, Mahomes and having both Mahomes and Baker helps. I think you're in the hunt. You don't have a ton to do it with, except you do have some picks to be able to move in about $3.5 million in space. But I think you're running back away from being, the favorite.
Yeah, I definitely like the position I'm in.
All right, time to the top 2. What do you think? Is it the Steelers or the Giants?
Giants, I have it 2, Steelers at 1, but that's because I think the Giants are like one injury away from being a mediocre team. But I'm going to probably guess that I'm wrong there, aren't I? Like I've been all day.
Not necessarily wrong, it's just that we disagree. Because I have Steelers at 2 and the Giants at 1. But again, I'll go through it. Because, again, I'm going based off of what I know right now and my own assumptions. Like you said, I think in many of these cases, you're one injury away. But we'll get to that. Anyways, Steelers I have at number 2. He has, Ryan and Schaub. So he's got the Atlanta quarterbacks. Fournette and McKinnon, which is a very nice stack. Julio Jones, Sammy, and Mohamed Sanu at receiver. Again, one of the top receiving stacks. Brait, who just got extended, so he's going to keep getting the usage there. D-tackle, nothing really stands out. Cam Hayward and Casey looking good at the end. He's got Davis, but not much else at linebacker. Boye plus a pretty sick corner position, and then Budda Baker and some depth at safety. and about 2 million in space. It's pretty close. I have between him and Giants. It's like I said, Giants I have at 186. Him I have at 184. So it's by the smallest of margins. But the D tackle position and then the tight end position, I think, are ones that if Lewis can upgrade, he definitely jumps into the driver's seat of this. But that being said, but again, for full transparency, like I said, I've got my weighted approach, which has the 186. If I go on net score of summing all of the positions with a top score of 90, Lewis has a 67 at Steelers, and then the Giants have a 66. So I'm contradicting myself on that regard as well.
I dig it. I like the Steelers team. I like it a lot. I think it's got the ability to kind of eat an injury or two and be still a top team in the league, especially if he plays the waiver wire game well.
The problem I have with his offense is it's completely Atlanta reliant. So if Atlanta plays a team that shuts them down, Lewis is going to lose that week.
That's fair.
Because it's basically the Atlanta passing game, Fournette, McKinnon, and Brate on offense. So if the running game goes bananas and Ryan throws for 150 yards and sits the second half, Lewis is kind of boned. Again, that could be said for a lot of teams, but the lack of diversity there could end up hurting him. But anyways, number one in the post-draft power rankings, we have the New York Giants. Quick overview for those listening. Tom Brady and Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Kareem Hunt in depth at running back. OBJ, Martavis, and Paul Richardson at receiver. Gronk and Hurst at tight end. Buckner as his D tackle. Number of rookies at D end, but nothing special. Marshall and Barr at linebacker. Crawley at corner. And Landon Collins and depth at safety. Also has $7.5 million in cap space if he needs to upgrade some things also. So point being, outside of his DN position, he's pretty well set across the board. I think to your point, if Hunt goes down or is less effective, he could definitely see some chinks in the armor. Same with OBJ or Gronk. But the elite upside that those players provide is tough to really scoff at. So that's why the Giants are my top team for now. Again, I put these together starting Monday with a few adjustments during the week, but based off of all of those trades I know you guys are hankering to make and just on the edge of your seat waiting for the power rankings before you did them. It's going to be an evolving side of things, but I think if I had to predict the Super Bowl right now, it would be Steelers-Giants.
That's fair. I just put the Giants. It's like he loses one of Hunt, Odell, or Gronk. Like that team's hard done because he doesn't have the defensive talent to make up for it.
Yeah.
And like I don't even think honestly he's just totally lacking at defensive end overall. That like he's not gonna get production out of Street because Street's gonna redshirt this year. I don't see Rasheem Green producing well, and Franklin Myers is a lottery pick. So he's not getting any production at defensive end, which for me is like a really big deal. But that elite offense, if it can stick together, it will be great. It's just I think he needs some more love on the defensive end side of things.
Oh, and he also has $7.5 million still to be able to do something with. So that's the other side of it. Is I did look at that and see they were my lowest rated position in the elite range was that D ends. The other side of it I see is for 7.5 and maybe draft capital, very easily could get himself a good to great contributor there, especially from a team that may be out of it. And bam, he's right back, and he's not only in the race, he's got a stranglehold on it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It'll be interesting. I still think it's probably just the difference between us valuing QBs.
I think that's fair. All right, so quick run through of summary. Number 32 Vikings, 31 Raiders, 30 Redskins, 29 Browns, 28 Lions, 27 Ravens, 26 Broncos. Tied at 24 the Saints and Rams. 22 tied is the Panthers and Patriots. 20 tied Titans and Cowboys. Three-way tie at 17 for Eagles, Seahawks, and Bills. 16 is the 49ers. 15 are the Dolphins. 14 Jaguars. 13 Chiefs. 12 Jets. 11 Colts. Sorry, I got those flipped. 12 Colts. 11 Jets. 10 Bengals. 9 Bucks. Sorry, flipped again. 10 Bucks. 9 Bengals. Falcons. Packers. Bears. Texans, Cardinals, Chargers, Steelers, and Giants. Now, for those interested in how that plays out from a playoff perspective, based off those rankings, it would have the Steelers and Chargers getting the byes, winning the North and West, respectively. Texans winning the South, Jets winning the East, Bengals as the first wild card, and Colts as the second wild card. As for the NFC, would be the Giants winning the East with the first overall seed in the NFC, Cardinals winning the West with the other bye, Bears and Bucks as the North and South winner, and then the Packers and Falcons as the NFC wildcards. As for the draft picks, would be the Vikings first, Raiders second, Redskins third, Browns fourth, Lions fifth, Ravens sixth, Broncos seventh, Saints eighth, Rams 9, Panthers 10th. So, again, I'm sure these are going to change, and I'll keep my spreadsheet going here. So maybe mid-season or as the season kicks off, once we have some more injuries and some other action within the league, we'll be able to update this. But for now, it's looking like we have the Giants as the team to beat, the Steelers as the AFC champ to beat, and myself as the team to try and out-tank for the first overall pick.
It's going to be a fun season. I cannot wait.
Exactly. So
usually I'm a big basketball guy. So like this time of year, it's like, oh, it's the finals. It's great. But it's 4 years in a row of Warriors Cavs. I'm done. Give me football.
Hey, I'm a Cavs fan, and you can ask a couple of guys I called but didn't bet on. So clearly I didn't believe in it. Called that the Cavs were going to get swept. So
yeah.
I'm more ready for the offseason than anything else in the NBA, but nothing else. I'm ready for OTAs and training camp to kick off as well.
Yeah. I'm excited for it.
Cool.
Gonna be good.
All right. Anything else from your side?
Nah, I'm good.
Cool.
Pretty much covered everything.
Well, thanks for joining. I appreciate it. That way I'm not having to talk to myself for 2 hours. And that way I can have a beer at least because, hey, I'm on it with you. If not, then I'm sitting here drinking by myself. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the listen, and I can't wait for Jeremy to turn this into a podcast. So those of you who don't want to sit and listen to YouTube can listen to it as well and enjoy it. But enjoy, and we'll talk to you guys in a couple of weeks.